These are ornamental cherry trees, everything. If you're looking around, remember, head on a swivel, not when you're driving, but when you're stopped and you're looking around or you're walking or going somewhere, look and see what's in bloom. The ornamental cherries right now are in and popped everywhere. So this is the perfect timing. You guys already know about me. I'm not even worried about it. Remember, AccuWeather. I want you guys to keep listening to what's going on, because if you get in tune with this, you're going to be in tune with your bees. What are they doing? Are they able to go out and forage this week? There's going to be a few days that are going to be in their 60s. The bees right now, and talk to other beekeepers. I constantly talk to other beekeepers. Dwight Wilson's already seen queen cells that have been capped, so that means swarm season's right around the corner. I mean, right around the corner. The next time we have a 60-plus day, if it rains in the morning and right after that rain, all of a sudden my phone will blow up with 40 or 50 swarms in Defiance County area. And I'll call on, if you want to be on the swarm list, let me know, and I'll make phone calls. If they're in your area, I don't run around because I don't run around like I used to, and I'll call you, and then you can go out. Do not be afraid of swarms, but understand how they develop. If I find a swarm that is there and it's been stable a little bit, I'll put out an alert either on the Facebook page for you guys or the mentors page if you want to meet me, and I'll show you how to capture a swarm. I got all the different tools and we'll go over it. I wish we could beat, because I usually bring all the tools into class and show you all the different stuff, but we'll start going through that. But AccuWeather, put it on your phone, have it in your daily routine. If you're going to keep bees, this is what you're going to watch for. If you see 5 days of rain, you know to go out and feed 1-to-1 sugar water, because the bees are going backwards. There's not enough forage for them. And then all the different temperatures and what they're doing. So what are your bees doing at different temperatures? And the disclaimer, bees will be bees. They don't read our books. The growing degree days, the other good tool about that, you're going to see what's coming in. Right now, I think we're at 84. I seen the other night. So already the northern light for Scythia, blah, blah, blah. The Japanese Paris and the maple trees have already bloomed. I'm seeing the red maples in my area, in my woods. All the maples have popped, so we're way past that point. The Varroa control, we're going to turn on and do that. We're going to probably do that. I'm going to be out in the apiary. I'm going to get a schedule out the first Saturday of the month, because I'm going to be out there on the second Saturday with you guys. We'll have class, and then we're going to start going out there in the afternoons. And then I'll be out there on the 3rd and possibly the 4th, because we're going to be out there mowing and doing other things. So I'm going to try to get a schedule around out this weekend and send it out to everybody. So if I'm going to be out there, someone's going to be out there, you can look on that schedule and know that somebody's going to go out. We're going to have bees out there. You guys can come out and work them. I have hives out there that are just for the class members. That's you guys. There's nitro gloves out there. I have my own hive tools out there. But you guys are more than willing to go out there, look at the hives, open them up, see what's going on with a mentor. I mean, there'll be mentors out there also. So if you want to kill my queens, and then go home and save your queen. But I want you guys to learn, and by learning, it's hands-on. And there's nothing more than anything of popping that first hive and the bees explode up, and you have the fun from there on out.
Yeah.
Remember to journal. And I want you guys, before the next class, start reading the Tools for Varroa Management by the Honeybee Health Coalition. It's going to be over your head, and I'm going to be honest about that, but I want you to start reading the different management, the PPE, which is the personal protection equipment about it, and the efficacy. So what's it doing to my bees? Is it a hard chemical? Is it something that's natural? What can I do? And kind of start getting used to that. And we're going to walk into that slowly, because by the end of May, then we're going to start taking alcohol washes. If we can meet in June or July and start getting back together, when we're going to go over these things and start talking about what we're doing. You're not going to do the same thing that each one of us are doing. I'm not doing it because of honey. So I don't care about hitting them with hard chemicals. I don't like to, but I will. But I'm raising bees for bees. You guys doing honey are going to do a completely different Varroa management, because you're doing honey. You cannot use harsh chemicals and have honey because you'll contaminate your honey. So everybody's going to have a different take on that, but please start reading that book, highlight it, I mean, it's your book. That's all in everybody's binder. Make notes on it. Send me questions if you have them, and we'll go through it. The hive mite or the mite counts, remember 9 per 300. That's the key. If it's a small nuke and you want to try and make a smaller sample, then it's 3 mites per 100. If you use the Varroa shaker that Dayton sells for, I think 19 some odd bucks, there's 2 lines in there, one for the 100 and one for the 300. Integrated pest management is exactly what's in that, and we'll go through all those different things. The green drone comb, how to use it properly. Hop Guard, it's a natural product from hops. Apivar, very strong. Oxalic acid, tons of safety needs to be done, but only good for in the winter time when they're brood less. Or in the summertime, you catch a swarm, you hit them with oxalic. Why do you catch them with a swarm? They have no brood. So you actually knock the mite count all the way back. The Mighty Mite mite heater that's in the center, a few people in the club use that very successfully. Mite Away Quick Strips is a natural, all natural product, very strong. You can get chemical burns from it. And then Apistans, like hitting them with a sledgehammer. For your inspections, I want you guys, don't worry about going into your bees. And the question always comes up, can I be into my bees too much? Absolutely. If you're constantly worried about your bees and you're tearing them open every 3 to 4 days and you're moving hives around and you're in there just bustling them up, do not be surprised if you go out there one day and there's not one bee in that entire hive, because you've agitated them enough. That's no different than if they've had a skunk out the front and they're being agitated that way, or if they're being knocked around and jostled all the time. The bees, it's called absconding, is what happens is the bees turn on, they as a collective unit, they say enough's enough, and the entire colony, they put the queen on a diet for about 3 days and they just disappear. They leave everything behind and they just leave. So you can be in your bees too much, but that week and a half, that's about your limit. But when you walk up, take a 5-gallon bucket, take an easy chair, outdoor chair. Do not sit in front of your colony, off to the side, and watch what your bees are doing. If you all of a sudden you see all the bees coming in and on her back pollen basket, you see tons of pollen coming in, you know 2 things. There's tons of forage in the area at that time, because most things are in bloom for a week to a week and a half, depending on weather. If all of a sudden everything's in bloom and you get a winter storm or summertime storm, all of a sudden everything's over waterlogged, all the blooms are gone, or a cold snap. So you know what's going on. So now I know that there's pollen coming in. If there's pollen coming in, that means the queen is raising brood. That means there's tons of nurse bees that are feeding royal jelly, and all the resources are there. Are they defensiveness? Are they turn on and are they is there a traffic jam? Are there too many bees trying to get in and not enough bees coming out? Do you need to move that restrictor? So just sitting in the front, even before I get in that hive, that's going to tell me a lot to what's going on. If I have 2 hives, one hive is busting, tons and thousands of bees are coming in and out, and the hive B has 1 or 2 bees coming in and out, and there's just nothing going on. Those are alarm signs that say, hey, I need to open up hive B and see why they're not doing X amount of work. I mean, did they fall back? Did something happen? Did I kill the queen or roll the queen? And there's tons of things, but just by visual, so you should always have an outside inspection and then you're inside. And then that's when we're talking about multitasking, hive beetles, moisture, and then the list goes on and on from there. It is very overwhelming the first time you open up a hive and pull up a frame of brood. You're looking at their wings. You're looking at their nice white blonde bees, because those are the bees that just emerged. You're looking for the nice white creamy larvae. So there's a lot of things, and we're going to go through it. So please don't get overwhelmed on this. We're going to go through it step by step. On your outside, so let's go specifically to the outside. If I see bees fanning, I see bearding out. If I see this and they're bearding out, I know I don't have enough room. That means I should have put a box on that thing 3 weeks ago. So I'm behind. The bearding out the front this way, This is actually a thing that they're overly packed. It could be a restricting time, but also I have to take into effect, is it 90 degrees with 80% your 90% humidity? You'll see bearding like this where they're just hanging out, they're fanning. These bees are fanning because it's overly hot that day. These bees are just coming in and out, and you'll actually see bees come up and they'll do a head bump. So as the bird or the forager comes in, they'll head bump each other, they're communicating, and they're walking inside. This is a normal. This is normal. This is abnormal, but also weather dependent and what's going on. So there's a lot of questions in your head, and then you need to get them answered. And once you turn on see that for a while and start to get used to it and see it, then you'll go, oh yeah, they're just taking an orientation flight. Because the first time I saw bees, it was in the evening about 5, 6 o'clock. The whole entire hive seemed to pour out the front, and they looked like a washing machine in the front, or like a big whirlpool on the front end. So I called Dwight Wilson. I said, my bees are absconding, or they're leaving. And I'm going through all these phrases I heard. And he goes, no, it's the young nurse bees in the evening coming out and taking an orientation flight. They'll come out and they'll do little circles in the front and get used to where the front end's at. And then that circle will grow a little bit, about 1.5 feet, and then 2 feet, 4 feet, 8 feet. And they do this big whirlwind around the outside. The sun starts to go down and they all walk back inside. That's the new house bees that are coming out. And for the first time in their life, in that 5th and 6th week, they're coming out and taking orientation flight. So the next day they can go out and fly. So there's a lot of things to it.
Wow.
Remember frame identification. Right now, you're going to see tons of this pollen, all kinds of different colors. Dead nettle is almost purple, and I'm starting to see dead nettle. And remember those things that don't look right. And you guys all done an absolute great job on that side of it. If you see the abnormalities, that's the time to jump on it immediately. Brood pattern, anybody buying a nuke, this is what you should see in that nuke. A nice, consistently pattern. A few heater holes because we still have some overnights. In the midsummer, you will not see those heater holes. You might see 1 or 2, and they're all really spaced out. This is a springtime thing because they're going down inside. If that overnight temperature stay below that 50, 60 degrees and they can't keep the colony warm, the bees will go inside that heater hole. She'll shiver and she'll warm up those 10 or 15 cells on each side and around her back up to that 90 degrees so they can turn on pupate out. This is what you don't want to see. If you buy a package and the package of the queen gets released and all of a sudden she's laying this problem, contact your dealer right off the bat and say, hey, there's something wrong. This queen she was inbred. She wasn't properly bred. Something's going on. I need another queen. But for nukes, you should always see this. In fact, you might even see some drones on the outside edge or bottom hanging on the bottom.
Jamie, is there any, I see the honey, I see the drone, I see the cat brood. Is there like pollen between the honey or no? Is there like pollen there?
On this frame, there's not. Okay, on the football, you'll always see this. It's called the honey dome.
Okay.
In between that, the only thing this is missing, right where this arrow is going between the honey dome and the brood, that should be all pollen.
Okay.
But in this box right here, because I have a new frame right here, so I already know what I did. I took the frame of pollen and pulled it apart, and because what they'll do is so think about this. In your colony, if you see it this week, in another week and a half, it'll look completely different. The brood will still be there in the air in the middle, but they're shifting around pollen. They're putting honey up top. So this thing is constantly, it's like an ebb and flow. As they get more nectar, they move that around. So they're constantly moving things around. But the thing it's lacking on this is, let me go back one more. Right here is where you see that. So here's my capped honey. There's my edge. So it's like having the kitchen sink right beside all the nurse bees that they're feeding. So you'll see this pollen. I also call it a pollen dome. So there's so much pollen right around where that brood area is at. If I go to this next slide here, that pollen is missing.
Jamie, we can't see you.
But it was actually on the frame down here. What do you see right now, Laura?
The spring and summer brood pattern.
Okay. Let me go back one. You see frame identification?
Not yet.
Me neither.
There,
There we
I
go.
see it now.
I don't.
Okay.
Yep, now
I
we're
went a little
seeing-
fast. I apologize. So in frame identification on this, John, this is what you're normally going to see.
Yeah.
As a young nuke, as it's building, you're going to see that pollen dome over the top. The springtime, you're going to see, I'll bet there's 400 different colors.
Hmm.
In the fall, when you get into asters and goldenrod, then everything's this golden yellow, and that's about it.
Okay.
In the springtime, you're going to see purples, greens, blues. Forsythia, you're going to see bright brown. You're going to see all kinds of different colors. But the biodiversity of the feed is what makes these colonies build. So it's like, do you want to eat Big Macs all the time, or do you want a nice gourmet, buffet type thing? And in this one, John, you see that pollen dome is not there, and that should be
Right.
popping up for you here in a second. So in this one, you see the honey dome. You'll see the drones, that 10% of drones, which goes, and then you'll see this constant pattern. As it warms up and gets hotter, none of these holes will be on the inside. You might see maybe 5 or 6 holes. But it should never look like what's off to the right with the shotgun pattern. It should never look like that. At that point, something is seriously going wrong with that queen, and she's shutting down. Nice white larvae. Remember that nice royal jelly. This is what I want to see. When you're looking down inside, this is what you're always going to see inside a colony. This outside edge in the middle, here's where the eggs are at. That next layer, here we have those little tiny C's. So if we look in here, you'll see these little tiny C shapes. When she comes out of an egg, she's actually straight. And that's when people graft, like myself and Andrew and people like that. So once it gets into the C shape, she's just, all she is just going around. So imagine going around in a circle, your mouth part, the mouth part that is against the royal jelly is actually eating. The opposite side is her air hole or her breathing tube. So her mouth is just going around in a circle, and they're just regurgitating royal jelly into that cell, and she's just going around in a circle and doubling up in size. So from here, from these little tiny C's to this next to these fat C's is only about 4 or 5 days. They're increasing their body size and mass that much. So when you look down inside and you see that entire these are called young larvae. These big fat ones over here are called old larvae. That means they're just getting ready to stand up and go into the pupal stage. When they're at this stage is where they have to make the decision. Their head's going to come up, their butt's going to go down, or their abdomen, and they're going to stand up. And then here in the far lower corner is actually, if you see right above this bee's head, she's actually capping this cell because the larvae has stood up. And that's what I say. That's not a pinhole. That's her capping that brood. And I see the whole succession from eggs to young larvae to old larvae to cat brood. And as the colony grows, you might not even see all of that. You'll see this in like from one side of the frame. It might be top to bottom. It might be left to right. It could be a little tiny golf ball in the middle, and then it grows out to be the size of a football. Again, how much resources is there, how much pollen's there, and what's going on. But if you see that all the time, you're 99% you're ahead of the ball game. Again, dry brood, wet brood, I want to see tons of royal jelly. If this is something that's going on, we have a cold snap. Like now, they're not regurgitating royal jelly. That means why all these nukes now are going backwards. When everything warms up and the bees are putting in nectar and they're pulling everything in and there's forage, then you have wet brood. That means tons of resources are coming in. And if it stays dry brood too long and there's not enough resources, they will actually eat these eggs and eat these larvae for protein. And it's called cannibalism.
The
For
nurse
you
do that?
young rookies,
the
nurse bees will do that because what they're doing,
instead
what
of
they're
feeding
doing,
them,
they're taking in the protein. Yep, they're eating them, and they'll actually, if it goes on long enough, you'll actually see where they'll take pupae, they'll uncap the top of the pupae and eat the heads of the bees off.
Oh,
Because the vitagelin's in the top of their head. So a young nurse bee, that's how she regurgitates royal jelly.
Sure.
And when she regurgitates that royal jelly, it's up in her head, it's in her membrane and between her eyes. And they'll actually, the bees, if it gets into like August and there's nothing there, they'll actually eat the heads off all the bees. They'll bite their body and pull the body out the front. So people say, oh, I got tons of chalk brood. This is not the season for chalk brood because it's hot. Chalk brood is only a springtime or late fall time thing because it's wet and cold. So you'll actually get cannibalism. A way to cure that real quick is right in the center picture. Take a 2-to-1 or a 1-to-1 sugar water, put a feeder on top, a Ziploc bag, 1-to-1, put little slits in the Ziploc bag or put by the feeders. The top feeders, they usually run $25 to $30. Everybody's got access to mason jars. Put a mason jar on top, and that whole colony will swing the other way. Here's we're faking them out to a point and giving them fake nectar. But remember, when you're a rookie, and it even applies to me, and when I'm putting in new frames, that frame of foundation does nothing for your colony. You have to get it to draw out. That means you have to have nurse bees. You have to have resources, and they have to lactate wax. And what wax is when on each nurse bee, when after the first week of life, she's actually a feeder bee. At that point, she's around feeding royal jelly. The second day or the second week up to about a week and a half, she's actually producing wax. It's an oily gland that once it starts to come out on her abdomen plates, it actually dries out, and it'll produce. Then that's what makes your wake or your wax flakes.
Hey, Jamie,
you have to have that. So for a bee, yes, sir.
If I'm buying a nuke from you, and we meet, and I have my hive, and we do the takeout. Do we take out like let's say two of your frames and put them that have already drawn comb and put them into my hive? And if I do, then am I supposed to give you like the 2 frames that didn't? Do we exchange frames? How does that work?
No. Back in the day, there used to be a lot of let's switch frames, this and that. When you buy a nuke from me, and it's a good question, John, because some queen breeders or nuke breeders will ask for a frame exchange. I do not. Okay. When you buy it from me, you get the box. It's usually a Jester box or it's a cardboard box. A Jester is a plastic. It's like the Coroplast signs that you see for the election signs.
Right.
So they run around $9.50 a piece, or I use the cardboard. I use a Jester if I'm going to leave them out and they're building up. The cardboard is good for about a week, and then it's good. I mean, if you want to put it back out or use it to catch swarms, keep the box. And if you see a swarm, you can go over, put that box down, trap them in, take them home. You just save yourself $180.
So you have the frames.
And that's a good question.
You actually have the. So I'd take your frames that already have the drawn comb and put them in my hive.
Yes, everything that you have. So think of a full-size colony shrunk down into 5 frames.
Right.
And you get all 5 frames. You get the queen, the nurse bees, the foragers, everything, the whole prodigy chain from egg to larvae to house bees, everything, even some drones if the colony's getting up that big.
So if I have an 8-frame hive,
so you get everything in it.
If I have an 8-frame hive, I take your 5 frames, I take my 5 frames out and put your 5 frames in that order that we talked about, 2 empty ones, 2 empty ones, 4 in between, whatever. But that's how that works is I take your 5 frames, take my frames. Of the 8 frames, I would take my 5 frames out and put your frames in.
Yep. And what you're going to do on that, John, when you take the nuke, you're going to come here if anybody comes and gets nukes for me, wear your veils, wear your suits, because we're going to get in the bees and you're going to turn on it. It's a little bit of heart wrenching because some people show up here in street clothes and I got 100 and some odd hives behind the house and it's scary for some people, but you're going to take that nuke home. You're going to put in at least 1 frame of foundation against the outside wall.
Right.
because you still want to keep my nuke to the center of that mass. So you're going to put in 1 or 2 frames in an 8 frame. Then you're going to put in my 5 frames in the
Okay.
inside of that. And then
Okay.
you're going to put one of your foundation on the other side of it.
Okay.
And then your extra 5 frames that you have is for your next box.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. So as a beginner, do not count on having honey your first year.
Right.
For people that get a strong nuke, you might have an extra 60 or 80 pounds. That means 1 pound honey bears. Imagine having 60 of them on your counter. So that's a lot of honey that you might be able to get this first year, but a lot of things are in that. Is it going to be a good year? Is it going to be a cold snap? Is it going to be cold, wet, and rainy? Are you going to be a good beekeeper? So don't instantly think you're going to get honey. So every time you build a nuke up, count on that colony that you're going to get 100+ pounds the second year. But for the first year, every time you put in frames of foundation and you're trying building that colony up, feed them 1-to-1 sugar water constantly on top. And that's what's going to help stimulate these nurse bees into drawing wax. So again, when you're feeding, the recommended way is to put an extra empty box on top and put a 1-gallon pickle jar if you want to, a quart, a pint, and put that right above the brood so the bees can come up and feed and then come out, pull it down, and keep going. Same way with the package. Package is much smaller, but that feed's going to be right on top. If you're going to do it with mason jars, have one out there. When it gets about 3/4 of the way empty, have another one in the house ready to go, and you can just go out, wear your veil all the time, because that's going to be that one time you're going to open that top and one of them girls are going to fall in love with you and come up and hit you in the face. You don't want it. This is what you have to have. So imagine that frame of foundation sitting here off to the left. You want this all drawn out.
Yeah.
That frame of foundation does nothing for your colony. It doesn't help sustain warmth. It doesn't give them anywhere to store. It doesn't give anywhere for the queen to lay. This is what you're going to see to the left on the lower side. You're going to see this nice white wax. That means they call it virgin wax. That means a virgin, or the little nurse bees have drawn that out, and it's beautiful white. Over time is when it starts to be off to the right, where it starts to get that yellow. It'll turn a light brown, a dark brown, and then actually turn jet black because there's been so much use. And then remember, she's laying bees in there every 21 days. So this is what you want. If it's all drawn out, imagine walking into your house and there's all the cupboards. There's all the cupboard space, all the storage. Now, if I have a frame of this, now the bees can go right to work.
Right.
But how much is it worth? Most beekeepers won't sell you a frame of drawn comb like this for under $20, because it takes 10 pounds of honey to make 1 pound of wax for the bees, and all the resources to do that. Remember the gaps of bees. So when we're building up, so this is after you get your nuke here, nukes around here, and everybody I've talked to, from Dwayne Hathaway to Dwight Wilson to Andrew, everybody else, everybody's shooting right now for that first and second week of May. That way, next week, we're supposed to get this warm up. She'll start laying frames of brood. Most people I know will not sell a nuke until that queen is laying 2 solid frames of brood. That way, I know that way that nuke is, I'm 95% sure that she's going to take off and everything's going to be good. When I take that home, John, so this isn't a 10 or an 8 frame or 10 frame.
Right.
Here's my 5 frames. I'm going to put them in your box, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That way, I know the brood's in the center. She's staying warm. Everything is good. Your frame's a foundation on the outside edge. This feeder jar on top that has about 8 holes with a very small nail, or the paneling nail, you can beat about 8 little holes in that. And then an empty box and your telescoping cover on top. This is your inner cover right above it. When this colony, and here's some things you need to watch. So when I talk gaps of bees, I'm looking at the gap. So if I would look on top and open this up, this gap would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I know that there's only maybe at 50%. They're not pushing. They still have room to grow. If I come over here onto the right, now I open up that colony. 2 week. This will probably be a 3 week, maybe a 3 or 4 week, depending on forage. Now I look at gaps of bees. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now I'm past that 80%, and the colony's going to start to backfill. And when I say backfill, they always leave the dead center. So imagine like a half a football. They'll leave that open all the time for the queen to lay eggs. If they turn around and get too jammed up, they're pulling in so many resources that you'll actually look like it's water in that brood area, that they're actually filling it up and backfilling. It's called backfilling. They're backfilling nectar in that brood area, and that gives no place for the queen to lay. They'll pack pollen in it if pollen's coming in as a resource, until that queen is so pressed up, the colony wants to swarm. And then you're going to see queen cups and you're going to see queen cells. At this point, at this point on the right, if I do not check this box and give them more room, they're going to swarm on me. And the next thing you know, I'm going to walk outside and half of my colony, really 2/3 of your colony leaves, and then it equalizes out about 50-50. So anytime a box gets around to that 70, 80 percentile of gaps of bees, I want to start thinking I have to have another box on top, and then we'll go through that. Oh, this messed up. My fault. Let me go ahead and click it. So we're here off to the left. My feed is up top, either a Ziploc bag, whatever way you want to do it. There's my colony. When I get to that 80%, my next box, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a frame. I'm going to pull it from the outside, shift everything over. I'm going to take that center frame that has brood on it, either nurse bees, eggs, larvae, pupae. I'm going to pull that out, and I'm going to slide in a frame of foundation, because the most important thing to the colony is brood. They want to protect brood. They won't even save the queen. They're going to protect brood more than saving the queen. So when they say the queen rules the roost, she really doesn't. So when I take this frame of brood out, I'm going to put a frame of foundation inside. I'm going to put my second story on here. Use your smoker. Don't crush bees. Use your smoker to your advantage. Give them a couple puffs. Give them a couple seconds to react, and they'll retreat from you. Put on my second box. Put on my empty frames off to the left. Put that frame of brood in above to where directly above where the other one was at. And then put in other frames of foundation and fill that rest of that gap up. Again, put on my telescope or my inner cover above that. Put my feed back on top, my telescoping top. And now what happens is the bees here in that foundation, the nurse bees are going to go, oh, we got foundation. We still have room that we have to pull out wax. They'll instantly pull this out like crazy and fill that back up with wax. The nurse bees that were above, now this thing's going to do a teardrop. So it's going to go from the outside. They're going to cover all these nurse bees and these babies and this brood up top. And then these nurse bees are going to start drawing out the wax beside this on each side of it. And that's how you start to fill your area out. If you do not pull that frame up to this next box, here's what I see a lot of times with beginners. Here's my colony. They're all nice and warm, everything, they're doing their thing. I take the next box and I throw a whole box of foundation on the top. The bees will come down here. They curl up top. There's nothing for them there. There's nothing there. There's nothing interesting for them to come up to the next box. That break, that 3/8 gap between the boxes is actually, to them, is like a barrier. They'll turn around and let this build up to 90% and they'll swarm. And then I have people call me and go, Jamie, I put on a box. And then I ask, what did you put on? I put a box of foundation on the top. Did you pull up a frame of brood? Nope. But down here, they had tons of room to grow. They had tons of room to come up the second box, but they never done it. So pulling up a frame of brood and putting it up top. Now we go to our right-hand side.
So we just
now,
a minute.
all of a sudden,
hang on.
Explain okay.
So back to the brood the brood frame that you pulled up. A couple questions. One, may I presume that you want to make sure the queen is not on that brood frame?
It does. You can leave her
Doesn't
on.
matter.
Nope.
It doesn't
Doesn't
matter.
matter?
Nope.
Okay.
If you see her on it, anytime you see the queen on it, just handle it with gentle gloves.
Okay. Okay.
Because she's got so much of a mass. If you take and bump it or set it down and she crawls off, the bees are going to follow her. So if
Okay.
you do see it, I mean, put it off the side. Or what to do is, if you're pulling these, remember you're pulling the outside frame first. If you pull that center frame and you see the queen on it, shift that off to the side to take the next frame beside it.
Okay.
If you want to take that extra insurance that you're not going to drop her, or you're going to bump the frame and she's going to drop to the ground, and so
Well, my
just
thought-
slide it over, take the next frame that has.
My thought was is that if you needed to make sure the queen stayed down, did you need to put a queen excluder between that new box and the first box? But the answer would be no, because it doesn't matter if the queen's up there anyway, right?
No, I'm real hesitant for people to use queen excluders
Yeah, I understand.
because of this fact. If I have a young virgin queen that goes out and gets really mated well, she comes back, this brood area, they always say the bottom two boxes, if you read any book, the brood area stays in the bottom boxes. In this third picture, I've seen queens actually come up and lay in 3 boxes tall. The old
Yeah.
adage for all the beekeepers we say that she's going to lay 1,500 eggs to 2,000 every day. Randy Oliver done a lot of different things on this, where he came up with some kind of mathematician thing after they counted cells on frames, that virgin queens, when they go out and mate, if they get over the 8 microliters of semen and they come back and there's perfect forage, perfect bees, the beekeepers give them enough room, they actually lay up to 3,000 eggs a day. So if I go on my second box, like a lot of the books say, above my second box, I put a queen excluder, and those 2 boxes get 80-90% jammed up, where's she going to go?
Mhm.
They're going to swarm. So for right now, the reason I say beginners, and also myself, every time I start a colony or start a nuke, I have to retreat back to my foundation of being a beginning beekeeper. I have to feed. I have to watch. I have to get that drawn comb. That's my golden ticket, if you want to say that, the Willy Wonka golden ticket. When you go into this off to the right, if you look at this last one, this is roughly what's going to happen. And let me explain this. Here's the queen. She's going to lay in those 3 boxes. The bottom gray area, those cells are going to stay empty. And the reason they're going to stay empty is the foraging bees that are out collecting pollen, when they come back in, they don't come for here. They don't go in that gray area and climb all the way back up to the top and drop their pollen off. They come in, they crawl in these lower cells. It's like taking from your garage to your kitchen. You're going to get it out of the garage and put it in the breezeway. And then the kids in the house, or your husband in the house, or wife in the house, is going to take it from the breezeway and take it up to where it needs to be in the kitchen. This is called a transfer area. And you'll see, if you ever open that up during the year, you can actually take them frames, tilt the frame to the side, and little BBs of pollen are going to fall all over the place, because the house bees are now taking that pollen, carrying it up top. They put it in a cell, and they take their heads and they ram it together, and they're trying to burp the air out. And then once they get the cell completely full of pollen, they've got it all rammed in the pollen, they take honey and coat the front of that, and it starts to ferment and make bee bread. So there's a whole process that goes on there, because some people will go, my bottom frames, and that bottom could be 3/4 of the way up. And they're like, I got this gigantic workforce and the bottom boxes are empty. Don't mess with that area, because they have their own system going on, and that's what they're doing. The outside edges will always have honey in it, depending on this queen. If she's an aggressive, I mean, she's really pouring it to it. Everything's going in a flow. The beekeeper gave her area. Here's where my honey dome is on top of this 3rd box. Most people will say the queen will never cross the honey dome and go up. Talk to any beekeeper, experienced beekeeper. The queen will go up and keep growing as much as she needs that space.
Mm.
If it's a small colony, it may be a Cordovan, they'll have a smaller area. A Russian, Russians will take up all 3 of these boxes, but they're an aggressive bee. So, and then remember, keep feed on top. Once we get into the nectar flow and we start having the 60 and 70 degrees every day, the overnights are staying above the 40s and it's not getting cold, then pull that feed away, the sugar water away, because they will not take it if there's natural things coming in. So if all of a sudden you see in the forecast, going back to AccuWeather, 4 or 5 days of rain, go back and give them a little bit. But if you see the nectar flows going on, everything's in bloom, it's that time where everybody's going out. You're hearing the birds every day. It's beautiful. Let the bees pull in their nectar because it's real honey. If you're constantly feeding them sugar water, it's not real honey. All you're doing is taking corn fructose or glucose and fructose and making fake honey out of it.
So every time you put a new box on, you don't necessarily need to feed depending on the nectar flow. Is that what I heard?
Yep. Once the nectar flows in, so we see the dandelions come out, the white Dutch clover comes out, everything's in bloom, then I would pull the feed away.
Okay.
Because all the natural, because the nectar itself has micronutrients, enzymes, flora for all the good bee health in their gut. They want that. If I have to keep feeding tons and tons and tons of sugar water, you'll actually have mold problems and there's other problems you'll have over time. So don't feed them constantly like that.
Okay.
But in this cold, wet, and thing up to this springtime, once it stays over 60, 70 every day, the overnights are above freezing, and we get into that summer, beginning of summer type thing, then the nectar flows on.
Okay.
Then pull the feed, let the bees do what bees do, and they'll do it well. But if I see 5 solid days of rain, wet, and nasty, I would go back out and put on a sugar water.
Okay.
Okay, so we're into full season. Same thing, nuker package, it starts to bowl out. The next box, we pull it up again, and this is exactly what you'll see, this dump, 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 dump. If you're a seasoned beekeeper and I have tons of drone comb in the garage, this is even going to go faster. So it all depends what you have. This is our goal of what we want to see. A spring buildup, a great population. Queen cups are not bad. Remember, it's like a coffee cup. You'll see them orientated downward. Take the frame up, look inside the queen cup. You're always going to see them. If you tear them out, the bees will pull them back. Different breeds of bees will have different cups. Italians, you might see 5 or 10 inside. If you start to see that queen cell getting pulled out, then we have problems. But at this point, we look at the gaps of bees. Here's a 10 frame box, 11 gaps of bees completely from left to right. That colony, and up top, you see the little burr comb on top. This box is already setting up to swarm because they're so jam-packed. So at this point, I want to try and make a split, or I can pull out frames of brood, put it in the next box up top, and give them 2 frames of foundation and open things up a little bit. But this is what you constantly want to see. A strong colony will do a bunch of things for you. A strong colony will keep out hive beetle. A strong colony will keep out mice. A strong colony will to run and keep out wax moth also. If your colony is shrinking and you give them too much room and they can't defend it, you can't take a colony and go, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. I'll just put on 2 extra boxes and let it go. Remember, the house bees are marching that off and trying to protect every little slot in that container. The biggest pest to honeybees is the beekeeper because we're cracking the box apart. We're going in and manipulating the hives all the time. But if that little tiny ball of bees has to protect this gigantic colony or the hive, they're going to start to suffer. As they suffer, they get stressed. You'll get hive beetle in, you'll get wax moth in, and you're going to have tons of critters inside, and then you're going backwards. When we talk about, and I remember I talked about backfilling, this is normal. So I have a frame here, and I have the honey dome across the top. That's normal. The bees will go up top, and they'll keep packing the nectar above the box. If I go in my notes and I said, yeah, I see a honey dome. What if I go in there a week later and now I see this, where they're pulling the honey dome down and now they're encroaching the queen. Remember, the queen wants to lay here. If the queen can't lay and things are getting packed up with pollen and or nectar, and all of a sudden I go in there and that whole entire frame is nectar and there's no room for the queen, they're setting themselves up to swarm. If they get to the point where that last box and you see the entire, it's called backfilling. If you hear people saying, I see tons of backfilling, when you get your colony into that swarm mode, it is almost impossible to get them back out of it without major adjustments to the hive. Again, queen cups. It's like looking at a coffee cup. If it's flipped over this way, you'll see them on the front. You'll see them on the edges. You'll see them hanging down below. There's nothing wrong with queen cups. The problem is with if you turn on let it go and you start to turn on, think of the coffee cup. Now I take the coffee cup and I take the frame, I pull it out, I tilt it at a 10 to 15 degree angle, put the sun to my back so it's shining in, use a magnifier even if you have to, or bifocals. I look inside the cup. Now I see royal jelly and I see a larvae, and the cell's getting longer. It's getting pulled out like a raw peanut. Now this one is at day 7, 8, or 9. It hasn't been capped yet. At this point, the old queen might be there. Do not tear this out until you know if you have a queen or not. If the old queen already flew away and you take your hive tool and crush this, you have no possibility of having a queen ever again. You're going to have to buy one. If it's capped, you see the end of it. So you'll see this one, it's opened. This one is closed. And you'll see another queen cup. At this point here, if it's closed, that's on day 9. That means the old queen and 2/3 of your workforce or a half of your workforce is gone. You should be able to see that in your notes when you said, I had 7 frames of, or 7 gaps of bees. You go back in and they swarm. Now I have 2 gaps of bees. That's why your journal is important. If you ever pull this up and you see the end of it's completely chewed out, like just think of it as the old Boy Scout or the old kitchen type where you took a can opener and you actually had to crank it yourself. The end of this thing is completely chewed open and made this perfect circle trap door. That means a virgin queen is running around inside. Put the colony back together and make notes to do not touch that colony for another 2 weeks. That means that virgin queen is around spreading her QMP or her queen mandible pheromone, and she's going to run and supersede, and the old queen has been gone for at least 14 to 16 days. So that means you haven't been in your bees for over 2.5 weeks. So on that side of it, bad beekeeper. Nukes, if you decide to keep a nuke, and this is a spring buildup, if you're starting with a nuke this year, you could possibly take away the old queen. If you see a queen cell, you could start a nuke. So if you have the extra gear, the time and the resources, get a nuke from Dwayne or purchase one, whoever your dealer is, and get a nuke and then have that for extra things. It holds extra queens. It's a place to do a brood break, increases, supply resources for your colonies, and it's swarm control. And we'll talk more about nukes in next month. And a nuke, usually 5 frame, 4 or 3, but when I say a nuke, the standard industry across for USDA and ODA is 5 frames. So it's 3 frames of brood. When you come and pick them up, there's going to be 3 frames. At minimum is going to be 2. A frame of pollen and nectar, a frame of drone comb. You can actually raise bees in nukes, but you have to be in a minimum of every week because they're a full-size colony that wants to grow into a full-size colony, but you've given them half the space. If this 5 frames go and you just want to add on another box, put on another box of foundation, pull up a frame of brood, do the same cycle, and they'll go. Add on another so you have a 5 over 5 over 5 and go 15 tall. If you start going over 15, then this thing's going to get a little topsy-turvy. Don't be afraid to put a tent stake or a fence stake and drive it in and put ratchet straps to it. Nukes, they're just tons of resources. So again, If you see a queen cell, I can start a nuke. I can turn around and find another queen cell, start a nuke. I can purchase a different queen. If you have a queen and all of a sudden you find somebody who has some different genetics and you want to try something a little bit different or get adventurous, or you catch a swarm, take that swarm and put it in a nuke. They'll build up faster. It's a tiny colony in a tiny box. Let them build up. Make sure the old queen in a swarm is always the old queen from the colony, and then let her prove herself. Make sure she's laying, make sure she's doing good, that you like her temperament, because not all swarms are very nice and docile. And then if you like her, turn around, put her in, wait till she gets a 5/5 to stick her in a 10-frame box. Or you can also purchase cells.
Yeah. Jamie, so if I want to make up, I look at my hive and the gaps are all full, and I see some queen cells being made, and it looks like it's maxing out. Would to make a split, I can use the nuke. I can take some of the brood out, some of the brood and honey and that, and to put it in the nuke. Is that like a split? Is that what's?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. It's called a split.
That's
so
what's
if I
called
had say you have a full size colony right now, okay?
Mhm.
If you have a full size colony, I could have my nuke sitting over here and then take that queen cell that's capped. Okay. You want to wait till that peanut's capped.
Okay.
If you caught it at that point, or it's just getting ready to get capped, so it's already pulled down, it just hasn't closed off yet, I could take that queen cell. Don't take the smoker and smoke the bees off that frame, because those are the nurse bees that are going to feed that. So I would take the entire frame. I would see a raw peanut on the side of it, and I would start a nuke. And then take another frame of brood with it. Minimum 2 to get about an 80% chance.
Okay.
If you do it with one single frame, then you're at a 50-50, even less than that. And it might take, because you're not taking enough, it's called enough support bees to make this thing take off. But then steal from your full size hive, steal a frame of pollen and nectar, or pollen and honey. Put in another frame of fountain. If you're going to do this, if you're going to make up a nuke, put a feeder right on top. Entice them to, don't make them fight and go out and forage, because they're trying to raise a new queen and everything. Once this 5-frame gets built up, you could sell that nuke and make $180 back in your pocket. If not, put on another box on top of it. Again, it's more boxes, more frames. Put another box on top and let them go up another 5 frames. Remember, in a nuke, that's about the same size of what a tree cavity is, and the bees will go up. They'll build up twice as fast in this, and you need to watch it. That's why I said minimum every week.
Okay.
And what I do is I just put on jar feeders. There's a special drill bit. It's like a paddle bit, and you turn around and cut it so the jars fit right in the top. Right there's my tops. I just put and I can walk right by, and I can see how much sugar water they took down. I can see the activity in the front. Small body or small colony, small entrance. If they start backing up and they get jammed up, then I'll flip it over and add another box on top. So that's exactly, it's just a resource and having it. And remember, records. Any questions? And that's a little bit of a review, because that's what you guys are going to get into here within the next week.
Oh boy.
So in the next week, have your hive placement ready, your stuff painted, your frames ready to go, your PPE, your full gear, your gloves, smoker. You do not have to, for those of you that there's a few of you that are not going to get into bees this year, at least have your PPE and gloves. Out at the apiary, when we do the hands-on stuff, I'll have my smoker and hive tools out there, but have your own PPE, so that way if you decide to get into it, the nice thing about bee gear, other than the bees themselves and the frames, smokers, hive tools, extractors, wax spinners, all that stuff, if you buy it, let's just say for $100 today, I can sell it for $95 in 5 years, as long as you upkeep it and maintain it. That's the nice thing about it. The clothing itself, if you only wore it a year, you'll just about get all your money back into it. Now, if that gear has propolis hanging all over it and now it's a dark brown and it's all stained up with bee poop, no, you're not going to get your money back out of it. So it's just something that at least have your PPE. When we go out to the apiary, I require a minimum of a veil. If you want to use our veils out there, you're more than welcome to. We have sanitation spray and everything to wipe the helmets out every time somebody uses them. If you feel comfortable in that, you're more than welcome to come out and just use that. If we open up full-size hives, just remember, a full-size colony's got 60,000 plus bees into it, up to 100,000, possibly more. So when we have 5 students out there and we're opening up 5 colonies, things get kind of ballistic out there for a little bit. And I just want everybody to stay safe. So any other questions on this?
I'm trying to digest it here.
And I'm going to take everybody off mute. I just seen a lot of people were muted. Unmute all. Anybody have any questions about this up to this point? You know, I told you about 2 weeks ago that you had about 3 weeks, and now the time is kind of running out. So we need to get our bee gear ready, have everything painted, everything put together.
Jamie,
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Here, wait a minute. All right, I am the one that had bees die over the winter, and I have these 2 frames. I think I saved some of the bees like you suggested, and they're in the freezer to do a night wash. I think because
Good job.
some of the the frames look black, and I think there's disease on them. Can I scrape them down to the bare frame, you know, the plastic, and still be able to use them?
Okay. And that's a good question. If you can scrape it out and it takes most of it off the foundation to where you can still see the foundation and you can get most of it out, go
Yes.
ahead and scrape them down. What you can also do, if you go to scrape that and it's still stuck in and it's making a nasty mess on the plastic, don't be afraid of taking the plastic and popping it out of the frame and then just buying a new plastic frame and popping that back in.
Okay. And
Okay. So assess your frame.
okay.
Assess your frame. If it's still that golden yellow or that white, and it's just getting to that brown colorish,
Right.
and you can scrape those areas out and everything looks okay, I would just stay with it. If you start getting to that dark brown, chocolate, and black, then I do it myself. I go with all plastic. Don't be afraid of just reusing the frame, scrape them down real good, pop the plastic out, scrape the area, the groove out of it, and pop a new piece of plastic in.
Okay. When you talk about Dwight, I don't know where that site is. Does he have a store or a place that I can go to buy things?
Dwayne Hathaway. What I'll do is in fact, here in about 2 minutes, we'll take about a 5-minute break and I'll email that catalog out to everybody from Dwayne Hathaway.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Also,
problem.
Jamie,
He's about the closest area dealer. He's over by Deschler. So if you take 281 out of Defiance, it's just about 31 minutes right to his place.
Yeah, about
Jamie.
35 from my house.
Jamie.
Yes, sir.
Just for everybody's information, and I don't care, obviously could care less who you buy from, but Man Lake, I've bought a lot of equipment from them in the last 2 or 3 weeks. If you call them, you may just get cut off because they're getting bombarded due to the COVID-19, and you just need to keep calling them and you will eventually get through, but they don't have enough people to take the orders. So I thought they were like shut down and out of business. And so I tried a third day And on that third day, I actually got through. So they are actually open if you want to use Man Lake or was it Kent? But it's a little more. It's not as easy as it was a few months ago. Just for your information.
And even with
Thank
Dante,
you.
when I went to order some stuff for 8-frame up there in Albin, Michigan, and talked to Chris, they are completely, their warehouse is like
it's there.
empty.
Yes.
I mean, they've been bombarded too, so.
Yeah, when I talked to Chris, and if there's things that you need that you're not in a time crunch for, there's a few of us from the club, put it in the mentors page and say, is anybody going up to Dayton? I usually go up to Dayton at least maybe once a month up to Chris's because I'm getting queen rearing equipment. As long as you call up there, call Chris, pay for your gear, and just say, hey, I'm just gonna pick on Gail. Gail's gonna turn around, call up there, and Jamie's gonna be up tomorrow. He'll put it in the warehouse for me, and then I go up and get everybody's gear. And I usually go up and pick up whatever. I got a big enough vehicle to do it.
Kill them
But
all.
if you want things or you want to get in a couple things, you go, yeah, I'm not on a time crunch for it and I don't need it right now. Wayne's probably the closest. But
Yeah.
for Dayton, for Man Lake, if it's over $100, if you spend over $100, they'll ship it to your house for free. Same way with Dayton. But if it's something that you need and you see somebody on the mentors page that they say they're making a trip up to Dayton, then you turn around and just type it in, say, hey, I want to jump on that bandwagon, or I need some foundation, or I need a chemical treatment, so they can turn around and take care of that for you. And we got plenty of people that go up to Dayton at least once a month. Let's take about a 5-minute break. I'm going to take Dwayne's catalog and send it out to everybody. So get up and stretch your legs a little bit and grab some coffee, or we're getting on lunch.
Taking a 5-minute break.
Amy, this is Laura. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
On our first class that we had with you, there was a frame that in our paperwork that didn't have anything on it, and there was supposed to be a video on it that you wanted us to watch. And we were going to do it at the end of class, and we didn't get to. Is that something that you want us to see, or?
Yeah. Yep. I'll turn around and pop that up here in just a little bit. Let me send out this email, then I'll go ahead and cue that up. Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
reminder.
Oh, God. I don't know how to find the queen.
No, but I'd love a couple more. Heat up some water and I'll do the rest.
No, like, she's like straight down to right here.
Okay.
She's sitting on my head, and I'm like going there, and she just starts slipping, and it'll fall off my head.
Jamie, when do I pick up my kit?
Your kits all should be mailed. In fact, that was a conference call that we had. All the kits should be mailed out this week. I'm not, as far as I know. That's the
Okay.
last thing I heard. Peggy, they were going to the warehouse probably tomorrow. I know it was good later. They said later in the week, and that was on Tuesday that we had a conference call about the Zoom thing that we're doing for OSBA. And they talked about going to the warehouse and getting all the rest of the kits out. But
Okay.
let me make a note of that real quick.
That's good to know because it's going to go to the site, and the normal UPS place where they're putting packages at, stuff's been all over, so I'll have to keep a lookout for
Yep.
it. Okay.
Videos.
Jamie, will Lenny be eligible for one of those kits as well?
Let me find out. When we were on a conference call last week, somebody told me that they were done, and then I got another phone call about a week later, and Tim said there were some kits left. So let me find out about that first. But yeah, any of the beginners are eligible to turn on and get that. What it takes, you have to have your apiary registration. Along with your apiary registration, you have to have a receipt that you bought more than just like a hive tool and got into bees. The beginner class, which you're taking with me. And then, let's see, ODA registration, bee receipt, and first aid class. Yeah, just those three things.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Trying to find one of these to play with. Okay. Thank you, Laura, for reminding me on the video that I was gonna play. So this, for those that you're on, and I'll let it play for a little bit, and I'll describe this again. This is the life cycle of a worker in 21 days that are sped up all the way to about 36 seconds. So there's the vitagelin in the head, and that's why when cannibalism happens, they actually eat the head off in between the eyes, and they eat that nutrient-rich vitagelin between their eyes.
Wow.
And this next round, once it replays, I'll turn on and I'll tell you each one of the cycles. So you notice the little blonde bees, and then they'll get their coloring of their sisters or their mother's traits. It's called an allele. It's a traits like our eye color and things like that. So you'll see an egg. That egg drops to a larvae, and then it just sits and goes around in a circle. And notice the size of it as it's growing. And that's all it does. So on the top side is a breathing tube, and on the bottom side is a mouthpiece. So when we graft, we have to graft and we can't flip that larvae. If we do, then it turns around and suffocates. There's the bees, and they're pupating out. They get their eyes, and then they have instars. And did everybody see? Let me stop this real quick.
We got our
You'll see. Does everybody see the varroa? That's a foundress laying eggs,
there.
laying eggs in the bottom of that fountain. And as it's getting ready to be capped, this is a scientific lab that actually cut the cappings off. That's when varroa starts running around and going to the bottom, and she's going to lay one male, which is her son, and then she's going to lay multiple daughters. If it's in a worker brood, she'll get out 1.8 daughters. That means math-wise, she'll get out one mature daughter. The other ones that are called instars, they don't get to that full hardness of their shell, and they actually desiccate or dry out. If that foundress goes down and she's in a drone, now on the 24th day for a drone, she'll actually get 2.1 or 2.2 daughters out. That means 2 mature ones, and then the other ones will desiccate out. So when we have drone brood, if you look up here, right above that, there's another one underneath here on that abdomen plate eating on this larvae. And it's still a larvae. Once the larvae pops and they get the eyes, then into the pupal stage. So I'll play that a couple rounds and let you see that.
Wow.
So in the Vitagelin in the head, if you take, and we'll do this in the biology section, we'll actually take a microscope. I'll cut between her eyes and pull the Vitagelin out. And imagine a grapevine with little clusters of grapes. That's how she can regurgitate. So imagine taking a saltine cracker and putting it in your mouth. They salivate royal jelly. And then when they come out, notice the bee with her button in or butt down. She's cleaning out that cell for the next round.
Can you hear me, Jamie? Am I muted? Nope.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. In case anyone's interested, I found something that was very helpful this last week in this month's American Bee Journal. I think it was like page 505 or something. A woman wrote a very good, the 11-day cycle of a honeybee or something like that. It was talking about going, different stages within the larva. And see, once I'm seeing this, I thought she wrote it very well, very down to earth, and it was very helpful for me. If anybody gets the American Bee Journal, you might want to look at that. I thought it was very helpful, actually.
American Bee Journal is really good. It has a lot of scientific papers and things like that. Plus One is PLOS1 is a website, and you can actually see all the scientific journals that are out there when all these papers come out. They're actually putting out, that's when you see the doctors are putting out science against each other, and they're trying to do trials, but it's called Plus One. So if you like that kind of thing, that I read them all the time and look for them. But it's all the new bee stuff that's coming out, entomology, horses, it's everything. You just type in apiary or honeybees, and you can drill down and see all the new research that's coming out month by month. And here in about 30 seconds, you'll be getting the update from Hathaway for that. So. Okay, let me.
Nice pictures.
Oh, I have thousands.
Nice
I
and
owe them, most of them, to my wife, because I'll turn on being the bees, and I'm like, oh, get a picture of this, get a picture of that. Yeah, it's not the official GoPro brand, but I bought some off-branders to do some stuff. Now that I got a lot more video capability. I got a brand new computer and things like that with tons of memory. But that way I can do a lot more videotaping. So now we're going to do GoPros where we can go out. I'm going to take frames of bees and hold them up and then record the entire frame for people that want to run find the queen. How do you look on a frame and see where the queen's at? I'm going to do some live classes like that with recordings to be able to see where the queen's at, and then after give them a 15-second countdown and then actually circle the queen as she's walking. So it'll help you get your eyes familiarized with what am I looking for. I pull up a frame of bees and there's 5,000 bees on this frame. How do I find the queen? And there's characteristics with that. If you can start pulling up frames and your eyes start looking at and seeing the drones, you're on the way of finding the queen because your eyes are seeing the difference in that. It is overwhelming the first few times. I mean, it might be 4 or 5 months of being able to turn on, adjust your eyes and go, okay, what am I looking for? What I always say is if I can get the queen, I'll take the frame and put it up to my mouth and I'll blow just like you're exhaling, but blow across the frame. It puts CO2 over all of them and they'll get on a run. So they're all sitting kind of still, maybe moving slow. Once you blow across them, they start on a run. And the queen will look like if you're sitting on a bridge and you're watching a boat go down the river. How the wake of the river, how the wake behind the boat, that's exactly when the queen walks, everybody splits. So all of a sudden you'll see this gap of bees and you just look all the way up the river and then you'll see the boat and she's motorboating right around the thing. So I'll teach you all kinds of different tricks. All right. Most everybody's back. So for those of you that did not see it, let me get it here. And I'll do an explanation on this. So what this video is, I was going to show you last time. So thank you, Laura, for reminding me. What we have is, this is the egg that just dropped into a larvae. When this happens, this is all going to take place in 21 days, but it's just shrunk down. So the egg dropped into a larvae. That larvae, remember I said, they're spinning around, circle and circle and circle. When they're spinning around like this, there's two different things that are going on. They're increasing their size 100-fold every 24 hours. Their mouthpiece is actually on the underside eating royal jelly. Their air hole or their breathing tube is actually on the top surface. So they're actually split down the center. When I graft, I'm picking it up as a young larvae, way, way before this. But when you graft, you're actually hooking underneath this bee and floating it on the royal jelly. But if I flip her over and I put her breathing tube down and she turns around and suffocates, the larvae dies and the bees will eat her. But as they spin around, that's all they do all day until they get to the size that they cannot be in that C-shaped anymore. They're so fat they have to stand up and get into pupal stage. The pupal stage doesn't start until their eyes start to develop, and they're called instars, and they'll start to turn on, and their tongue sticks to the side or they're outside. You'll see the antennae starting right here with the mandibles, and they're starting to gestate out. And you'll see this outer skin starting to develop. Here's her eyes starting up in here. And then all of a sudden they pop in that last instar. This is called, it's called the white stage. They're completely white. There's nothing left of their larval stage. They're Turon getting fully developed. When we talk about starvation or the dearth going on, this is what happens if that dearth continues. Their salival gland or their vitigelin that's in their head is secreting that young nurse bee all the way to the house bee stage. She's secreting, if you pull this out, it's a little strand. It looks like a grapevine with little clusters of grapes on them. That's secreting tons of nutrient-rich royal jelly. When it does, that's when if there's cannibalism, the bees will come over and cut between her eyes and eat this portion out and then take the body and pull it out. So that's what's happening when there's cannibalism or there's a malnutrition or something going on. They'll continue. This is called the brown-eyed or pink-eyed stage. This is the first thing that's going to color up, or the eyeballs. So when we talk pink-eyed drones or purple-eyed drones, that's what we're talking about, different stages of the bee. As they start to pupate, then you'll notice the bees here, they get this crusty shell or the last instar stage that they're starting to pop. As they pop, as soon as they do, they come out and you'll see that blonde hair. At this stage, they come out, there's the 3 dots on their head called ocelli. Their antenna will turn on and stretch out, and they'll start to like to air dry. Young nurse bees, when they come out, you'll notice them running around on the frame, and you'll go, why is that blonde bee? Where'd they come from? It's all young nurse bees that have not developed their color yet. Within 24 to 48 hours, then they start, that hair will turn on and start to turn on and pupate out, and they'll turn on and start to get the color of their sisters or mother or the instar. So here, the first thing they do is they come out, and you'll notice tongue to tongue, and they're doing trophallaxis. Usually, there would be nurse bees on the top of this walking around. As soon as they pop out of that, they're feeding tongue to tongue, and they're feeding this young nurse bee or this baby bee that's coming out, emerging on the 16th day. Here's where we see a bee's butt inside. When she came out, she instantly marches around. They go back down inside that cell and they clean their own bedroom out. They'll polish the bottom. You'll see white stuff in the bottom of these cells. That is Varroa crap or Varroa excrement. That means there's tons of Varroa, and you'll see that in an ADK kit. There's an ultraviolet flashlight that you can actually click on. You don't even early morning, late at night, you can see it a lot better. But you can take a frame of all drone or all emerged brood, look down in the bottom, and that purple light will make that excrement just glow. It's like being in a where they have the purple lights on when you walk in with a white t-shirt. It's just going to glow. So where you see the baby bee, she's down inside, and she's cleaning all that bottom waste of that Varroa up. So what's contained into that? Devormed wing virus, K-wing, sac brood, cashmere disease, and that's how the bees also collect a lot of these diseases, because a lot of this is going on.
Jamie, how they get in that? Just, it's a stupid question, but I'm just curious. As tight as they are in there, how did they how they turn themselves around? So the head's at the bottom and they're eating the bottom. You know what I mean?
Okay, when they're in that C shape, when they start to get so fat that they can't get moving around, their head will instantly pop to the top.
Okay.
So that last little bit from that larval stage to the pupal stage, they're practically standing up as a worm.
Okay.
Wow. Huh.
Back here. Okay, we're going to kind of glance through this. If there's any questions, this is a little bit further into May, late June. So this is exactly what you're going to see. Some things we're going to go to by the time you really start seeing this, we're going to have a lot more hands-on and doing stuff at the apiary. So on to summertime maintenance. And again, you guarantee, I hope you know me by now. At this point, there's a lot of stuff going on in the apiary. Healthy bees, low mite load. You're going to have multiple drones everywhere, even between frames. In between the frames, when you open up one box to the other, you're going to see tons of white drone larvae because they like to draw that extra drone brood in between the boxes. Feeding, sugar, pollen sub, and your goal in this is to be sustainable. Any of those things right there, laptop, iPad, cell phone, or Canon phone, or excuse me, camera, notepad. The more information you take, the more information you're going to get out the other side. The misinformation. This is beekeeper talking to beekeeper or hearing rumors or things like that. This is a gentleman. It's over in Hicksville area. I went to his apiary. He had 67 mites per 300 bees. His hives were crashing. His normal was to lose 50 to 60% of his bees, and he thought that was normal, and that's what he done. When I told him about his mite load, he actually stapled a thing of Apivar on the front entrance and stapled it. When he stapled it to the front, I said, and I asked him, and I was very polite about it, and I'm very professional about it, and I said, where did you hear it? Well, a guy in Fort Wayne at the bee club told me if you put it on the front, the bees will travel across it, and they'll take it inside. The problem is, where is the mite load? It's
Right.
in the bees.
It's in the box.
So number one, he never read the directions. Yeah, they're in the brood area. So he never read the directions. He didn't understand the mite load. He didn't understand what was going on and how the gestation of the varroa was happening. So when we went from this, and I politely, he's an older gentleman, and I do respect my elders, and I said, let me just teach you something a little bit differently, and let's see if I can help you out. The next following year, this gentleman, let me back step a little bit. When I first got onto his property and told him that I was going to do an alcohol wash, he called Barb Bletcher, my state boss, kind of threatened me to a point and said, get off my land. I left. A half hour later, Barb kind of talked him down, said, you know what? Go back there. He doesn't like inspectors. He thinks you're there to burn his gear. I went there and spent probably 4 hours with him. The next following year, at the end of it, he lost less than 8% of his bees. He was at that time around 120 bees or 120 colonies. He asked me to come to Sherwood. He bought me a pizza, bought me a pop, and now he's like one of my best friends now. But it's from misinformation and not following directions and ask for the science. Don't just do something because somebody tells you. I talked about the Fat Bee Man. This is his homebrew and concoctions. And if you follow him on Facebook, there's good and bad. He just takes a bunch of different things, tuma oil, lemongrass, this, that, puts them in these insect burners, shoves them in the hives and says he's never had varroa. Except I used to be on his talk show with him because I was the upcoming and good guy about maybe 5-6 years ago. And I asked him, I said, would you do a alcohol wash on your bees on camera? And then the next week, then I was kind of banished from his talk show, and now he doesn't talk to me. So
Like
it's
a snake oil
misinformation.
salesman.
Snake oil salesman? Exactly that. Small hive beetle, your summertime maintenance. And now we're talking into June and July. You're going to start having hive beetle. The problem is we're already seeing hive beetle now, high populations from last year, because hive beetle do not die in the wintertime. What they do is that colony is tightened up over the wintertime. The hive beetle live on the peripheral or the outside edge of the bees. The bees cannot eat them because they have the same kind of cuticles like your fingernails. The bees can't chew it. And what they do, they have two fuzzy antennae. They'll actually stroke the mouthpiece of the bee, and she'll regurgitate royal jelly. So they're fed all winter long. They stay on the outside, so it's just cold enough that they can turn on cluster with the bees, and the bees don't fight them off. Our problem is when they come in, they're looking for pollen. So what happens in the springtime? Now all of a sudden we have tons of pollen in. If you have a colony that's suffering, the female will go over. She'll take her oval depositor that's here on the end, and she'll turn on, shove that into the pollen, and she'll lay up to 1,000 babies. So you'll see her antenna here. They're nice and fuzzy. They walk around and they're just like an armored turtle. I mean, there's nothing the bees can do to turn around, bite them, or do anything to them. Here she is in her instar stage. What they do is they'll turn on from the larval stage. They'll drop into the soil 10 to 16 days later. They'll pupate out. So that's why we also have ground soak. And there's pyrethroids that we can spray on the ground at night and try to get rid of these pupae. But what they do is they burrow in the ground. And then when 3 to 4 weeks later, they're going to come out as a full emerged adult and attack another colony. And it's all driven by pheromones. So that what they'll do is they smell a colony that's distressed. Maybe there's not a queen. Maybe there's too much pollen and not enough workforce and they can't defend it. Hive beetle will take over. And what they do is they slime the colony. And when I say slime, those 2,000 eggs are microscopic. We cannot see them with the naked eye. When they come out, they'll come out, they start to eat. As they crawl around, their excrement actually ferments the honey. And it'll turn into this slimy, broody, it smells, for my nose, it smells like Pabst beer. But what they do, the 4 to 6 weeks, no. The adults can survive up to 6 months feeding on honey, so they can stay all winter long. As this starts to slime up, the bees will leave those frames. The more, I mean, imagine if she laid 3,000 eggs, it just keeps coming. Or you had 10 hive beetles and they laid 200,000 eggs. As they slime those frames, the bees will cluster into one corner. After there's so much of it, they'll just abscond and leave. This means you have not been watching your bees over a month. If you have this problem and I come in as an inspector, you send me photos of this, my first thing is, when's the last time you've been in your bees? If you tell me last week, I'm not gonna say you're a liar, but I will just smile and tell you that you're wrong. It ruins the honey frames. If you find tons of them and there's an excess of amount of them, take them frames, throw them all into a garbage bag, and throw them in the freezer and let them into a deep freeze or an excess deep freeze. Don't pick them in your nice kitchen in the house. That's why a lot of beekeepers have these little 5-foot or 4.5 cubic feet freezers in their garage. Or if you have an extra refrigerator, throw all of them in out in the deep freeze for at least 24 hours and kill all those larvae. The last thing you want to do is throw it out in the field and let thousands of them pupate. And the next thing you know, within another 3 months, you're going to have 10 times that workforce coming back. Large infestations that cause the hive to abscond. Avoid tossing burr comb on the ground. What are these like? They like that burr comb. So when you turn on and take your burr comb and you scratch it and you throw it on the ground, you're inviting more hive beetle in that area. When I start talking about the hive traps or the beetle traps, beetle jails, microfiber, pillow batting, then the pyrethrin is highly toxic to bees, so we have to use it at night. Sticky bottom board you can use with cooking oil. There's all kinds, but there is nothing that's 100%. It all depends how you're keeping your bees, how many you see, keeping your colony strong, and doing what you need to do. And each one of these, we'll talk about them in detail a little bit later, but each one comes with its pros and cons. About that time, we get into late July and August. If you do not have a strong colony, we have the lesser and greater wax moth. The best way to defeat this is have an insect bug zapper, old school bug zapper, out not near your colony, but out that way, because these girls fly at night. What they do is when the colony is retreated back inside and they're clustered at night, the wax moth will come inside. She does just about the same thing, and they can lay dormant for 1 to 5 months. The wax moth is eating all the wax in the colony. This is trails of this larvae. So what you'll see is that she can lay, again, 1,000 to 2,000 eggs. If you pull up a frame of pollen, so here's the pollen frame, and I see these little trails. This is the wax moth larvae that's eating underneath the cappings, and she's making this trail underneath. And you'll actually, if you hold the frame still or set it on the table or counter, you'll actually see the pollen start to move underneath. That's the time to take this entire frame, stick it in the freezer for 24 to 48 hours, and kill everything in it, because there's hundreds, if not thousands, of larvae moving this pollen and consuming the pollen. Again, the adults can survive up to 6 months feeding on honey, 50 days from the old empty super. This is a major problem. The biggest cause of it is leaving too much room for the bees. So if I have a 5-frame nuke, I don't want to instantly put on 3 boxes. Remember, the bees have got to defend every crack and crevice. On a telescoping cover, underneath that on your inner cover, you have a slot there. Some, depending on the manufacturer, you have 2 slots up top. Then they have to turn it and defend the front entrance. And between the boxes, if they don't sit nice and tight, these wax moths can crawl right in between and go inside and damage up the comb.
So Jamie,
So
if I put
here's what you'll see all these little.
if
Go
I
ahead.
put that frame, if I put that frame in the freezer for 24 hours and then the next day I bring it out, what do I do with it then? Stick it back in the hive and let the bees clean it out, or what's the next step?
Okay. I'll show you the young side of this and the bad side of it.
Okay.
So, okay, if I'm at this point right here with this frame, and it might take you a second to see this. So we're back on this frame with the tunneling. If I had this and I caught it this early, that means I caught it within a week. I see this, and it's not a problem. Put it in the freezer for 48 hours, pull it back out. If this is plastic foundation, I could take my hive tool and scratch everything out where that tunneling's at. Because
Okay.
what's actually done, they've eaten the pollen out of it and defecated in each one of these holes. So I can scratch all this out.
Okay.
If it's real wax foundation, I can take a knife and cut this area out and let the bees rebuild it back in.
Okay.
Okay, that's when you catch it early. I'll show you what happens when you catch it late. So nice, white, and creamy. The legs are going to develop 1 to 5 months and average 6 to 7 weeks. This is when you'll see that instar, and these to run almost double in size the same way. But when they're coming up before they pupate, they have this still silky, it almost looks like spider webbing all over the place. What they'll do, they'll come out and they'll spin these little cocoons. They eat into the edge of the wood, and they have this spider webbing all over everything. And the crap, you see these little pellets above, that's all their frass all over everything. And that spider webbing, and the bees will just leave. If you start seeing this, this is way beyond. Just take the frame, scratch it down, cut the foundation out, pop the plastic out, and start over. Also, you'll see if you see a small infestation, you'll actually see where they've opened up the brood of the pupae. They'll look inside and they'll recap it. And you'll see this, remember that pattern I showed you on the other one? You'll see this pattern just like this, that they're underneath the larvae and still chewing. And you'll see this nice little area too. And you can see they're called trace lines. And you can just line right up where that pupae crawled around in. This is the absolute extent of the other side, John. If you let them go, notice that frame was all drawn out. This is worst case scenario. They have gobbled up every bit of wax on that frame. There's all the spider webbing or frass. You could clean that all up depending if you have the time. If you have 1 or 2 hives and you want to treat them as princesses and save it, take a flame or over a fire a little bit, or if you have one of the little flamethrowers, you can flame this, clean it all up. If the foundation was bad on plastic, you could scrape this and clean it. If it was real wax foundation, that's when you just might as well cut this all foundation out, put in another frame of real thin set wax, and start over again. But I would save the frame. If the frame wasn't in bad condition, save the frame. When you go to store these, if you're going to do it, I would take this frame and stick it in the freezer for 48 hours to make sure there's no other eggs or larvae in here in that pupal stage. When you take your foundation and put it in a box, if you're going to store it, so this, let's just say we're into our 3rd year of beekeeping. I didn't use all my drone comb. You can actually put it in a box and actually store it with, it's the P word, paradichlorobenzene. It's not moth crystals. Diapichlorobenzene with the D That's moth balls. The para is moth crystals. What you can do, you can turn on, put this in a box, in an airtight Tupperware container. Nancy and, Nancy, come on. Nancy and Bill Krause, excuse me. They have the little, the containers that slide underneath your bed that are airlock. So they put on all their drawn comb at the end of the year, whatever's left over. When we start to get to that July and August, they put the frames in the boxes. They kind of alternate them, step them. And then they take a little piece of newspaper in the bottom, on some moth crystals, put the top, and lock it in. The moth crystals, when they go to use those frames next year or even later in the year, they can take that container, put the frames out in the sun and let them outside, let them air out for 48 hours. The bees will crawl back on them and take right back off. If you use moth balls, that chemical will soak into the wax and the bees will never touch it again. And you can pick up a container of moth crystals at Lowe's, Menards, Walmart has it for, I think there's like $4.50. The fight against either one of those and the lesser and greater wax moth is a strong colony. That's the kind of colony, when I open up the box, when I open up the inner cover, those I want to see. I want to see the bees boiling out, protecting every corner of this box. Same way if I'm going to raise nukes, I want excess bees everywhere. I don't want to see the gaps of one gap of bees in a nuke because they're going to get overrun. And I have it 2 years ago before I bought H&R Block. I had tons of problems with hive beetle. I had microfiber, beetle jails, ground soak, everything because the hive beetles were getting a run on me because I would make all these new little splits. Every time you make a split, it's this little tiny colony. There was more hive beetles than bees, and they would overrun, and then you end up throwing away this entire box because it's this ectoplasmic. If you've ever seen the kids play with that ectosnot or that ectoplasm stuff you put in your fingers that sticks and it's slimy, that's exactly what the hive beetle will do to a colony, and you might as well just burn the gear. We're going to go through the absolute pest of Varroa, and we're going to understand how the Varroa react. The world most devastating is for the Western honeybees. There is nothing that the Varroa is on everything. You cannot, and then you will hear people say, well, I have Russian bees and I don't have Varroa. You still do. Purdue University that I work with, and I go down and graft for them, and I do artificial or instrumental insemination on the best VHS trains I have there. They still have Varroa. They might not have as much, but they still have Varroa. This is the arch enemy of everything, and you're going to see the Varroa. They're brownish, they're reddish brown, oval and shaped. What they do, they go around and dig into the flesh and cause a sore on the bees. And what they're acting like is just like a fly. When a fly turns around to eat food, they intake, they digest it, they regurgitate it back up, and the acids break the flesh down. So when bees are on a dead carcass, if they're on meat or anything like that, they're throwing back up, back and forth. That's how Varroa is transmitting. The Varroa themselves are not harmful to the bees. But when they regurgitate this fatty acid back and forth and they're breaking down, it's like having a scab that's getting tore open every day, back and forth, back and forth. And then the insect guts, as she's throwing this back up, those 28 plus diseases is what's getting back into the flesh of that scab and causing us K-wing, Israeli paralysis disease, sac brood, black queen cell virus, and things like that. So what happens is, here's my young larvae. And see the larvae, it's not even into a C yet. So this is a young larvae, and I have all this milky, royal jelly in the bottom. What happens is that foundress, these Varroa have a snorkel built into them. They'll crawl down when this little larvae is going around circles and circles. If there's enough of a population, that foundress will crawl down inside. She'll sit underneath the larvae, and her little pupa or her snorkel will pop up, and she's just above the floating line of that royal jelly, and she'll sit and wait. And when she does, as this larvae continues to grow and stand up, then she becomes active. So what she's going to do, she's going to sit underneath and defecate, and then she's going to, her oval depositor, every 25 to 30 hours, she's going to try and have another female. The first one she has is a male. That's the first egg she lays, and she'll lay the male up on the sidewall. And as he comes out, he's the first one to emerge. She'll turn around and wait. She'll lay daughters after daughters, and then the daughters actually mate with her their own brother. The adult female, this is what you're going to see underneath the microscope. The adult males are always white, and then you've got deutonymphs and female deutonymphs. So as they turn on, and at this point, when they crawl down inside, if the bee emerges, so it pupates, it emerges. If she's still in the white stage, she'll actually desiccate and she'll die because her shell has not hardened off, and that they breathe through their shell. So if they, like we said, in a worker cell for the 21 days to emerge, she'll get out 1.8 daughters. That's one mature one with, like, in the math, it's like a 1.5 or 2 daughters. The other one will die, and she'll get out 1. If it's a drone, she gets out 2 mature daughters. So now you've exploded the population by 2, and then the population will build from that. But here's the egg, the protonymph stage, and then they just go up through.
Is that why oxalic acid works on
founders?
cat brood? Is that why oxalic acid works on cat brood? Because it breathes through that and that. It takes it in and then kills it?
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. Oxalic is best when they're broodless.
Okay.
So you caught a swarm. If you catch a swarm, guess what? There's no brood. You hit them with oxalic, you'll get there's nothing, let me say this. There's nothing that we have in our arsenal right now as far as beekeepers that's 100%. If you look on any of the directions or the chemical or MSDA sheets, everything's 92%, 94%, and they kind of give some variance in between there. The only thing that's the highest, but it's absolute timing, is when they're broodless. So if I'm going to have an overwintered colony, I want to hit this colony when it's above 38 degrees, hit them with oxalic when they're broodless. That means the queen has no brood, and hit them about Thanksgiving, between that and Christmas. Yeah. That way I kill all these larvae, these Varroa larvae, because there's no capped cells or anything else. If they're capped, even Apivar, Apistan, oxalic, Mitoway Quick Strips, Formic Pro, Hopguard, nothing will get underneath the cappings. And then the only thing you're killing is the phoretic mites that are actually running around in the open cells. So in a foundress, you'll see the 1 daughter per worker. Here's the math. In a half-year production, the increase is 12-fold. So here's a mature, here's the frass underneath. Remember we talked about the ultraviolet light. There's a daughter over here, and she's just down here, and she's expelling or crapping all over the inside because she's living right underneath the larvae. Here's a male that's mated. That's her son that she laid first. Here's other instars or daughters, and here's another egg. So she lays this egg, there's another mature daughter. So if you're looking at the pupae, here's that 20, maybe 19th, 20th day. Here's this foundress, but if you look, here's an immature daughter here, an immature daughter here, and they're sucking the hemolymph of that worker before she even gets to the pupal stage and emerges. So that's why we all of a sudden you'll see, and if there's 2 or 3 or 4 feeding off of her, it takes her lifespan. She doesn't live the 4 to 6 weeks. She'll maybe live 2 weeks. She'll come out with K-wing. You'll notice she'll have deformed wing virus, where the last thing on a bee that pupates out, that the maturity, are their wings. So if the wings at that last stage, she's so sick that her wings don't develop, then you start seeing deformed wing virus. That way, you also know if you see deformed wing virus that your mite load is so far off the top, it might be 20, 30, 40, 50, it might be 100, and your colony is crashing at that point. In a 1-year production, if you do nothing, it's 800-fold. And your bees will not make it. Your phoretic mites. So when bees go out, drones can go in any hive they want. So if a hive is crashing, or if, let's say, beekeeper A lives down the road and he does nothing for mites, he doesn't believe in treating, he just wants to be bees. Every time my drones visit his apiary or his colony and are fed, and he has a high mite load, the bees are just jumping on like a jockey on a horse. They're kind of like ticks. They're just hanging out. They actually take their legs and they hang out. As the bees walk by, it's like a tick in tall grass. They just reach up and grab on. They like a jockey on a horse. They crawl onto the back of the bee. The drones fly back to your colony, and guess what? Now they come in. Now they have another colony to populate. So when you're doing this, the phoretic mites are passing bee to bee, and they're also drifting. May last 4.5 to 11 days when the brood is present. So just before the brood is capped, in drone brood, if you're not doing it for honey, you take this pick. It's called a scratching pick. I've heard it called a couple different names by different people. You actually take that pick and run it through all the drone brood, through their heads, and pull it up. And it looks like little larvae. You got them all through here. And look and see what mature ones are here. And you can actually take a magnifying glass and see all these ones that are immature, which will be white. They're going to be harder to see, but you can see what your mite count is. It's not going to give you an accurate, but if I had a half a frame of drones and I did that 10 or 15 times and I only seen 1 or 2 mites, I could say, yes, my mite count is down. I'm good, compared to the picture to the right. If I take the drone brood and crack it open and I see this, and this was actually a guy in Northwest Ohio that called me and said, I'm seeing mites everywhere. And I said, send me a picture. This is what he sent me. And his hives crashed 2 weeks later.
Oh.
He tried to treat with Apivar. Apivar is like taking a sledgehammer to your bees and the mites, and it actually hurts the bees, but he tried to save the colony. He put in Apivar. The colony still died, but this is the picture he sent me and said, what can I do? At that point, I mean, and in that picture, I counted like 60. That colony's already over the edge. It's done for. When they're feeding in that larval state, for each bee that comes down inside, there's right there, there's a protonymph that's white. There's 2 mature foundresses that are walking around eating. This is what you're going to see. Jamie Ellis in the University of Florida, I'm going to give him credit for this. He's done extensive work on deformed.
Did we crash?
I don't know what happened.
So her wings are completely shot.
Jamie, we
At
lost
this
you.
point,
We don't
this
have
bee
no
is only going to
picture.
live. What?
We lost your
Lost.
PowerPoint presentation. Something came
let me
in.
see what happened. All right, let me see. Just 1 second. Share screen. What happened? I seen something blink out of the corner of my eye. And I
Yeah.
didn't know what it was. Okay,
There we
can
go.
you see the screen now?
Yep.
Okay. I didn't do anything, so I'm going to say that's the bugs in the world. That's the internet bug. Okay. So back to this one. This is that young larvae. If you look down towards the end of this larvae, you'll see this instar. So there's one here that's immature, a protonymph. There's 2 mature foundresses. So if there's 2 that go down inside, they're both going to lay a son, and that mite count's going to double because now I have 2 mature ones. Going back to this picture, I see 5 and 6 and 7 in some cells. So imagine that many feeding on this larvae. Now I'm having deformed wing virus, and I'm having tons and tons of problems. So you can see how fast things can get out of control. Same way here, University of Florida, Jamie Ellis said, by the time you see the mites like this writing on the back, it's like rats running out of a ship. That means the bees are just hijacking. They're going to other hives just to populate because the copulation here, there's nothing left. The queen, what she does, she usually lays tons and tons of eggs. There's not enough nurse bees to feed them. And you'll see tons of eggs and real young larvae that are just dried up and scabbed in the bottom of the cells. Because these girls are actually running to other colonies and they'll jump on top of workers. They'll sit in a flower and wait and jump on the next bee that comes by. So at that point, that's called a mite bomb is what beekeepers call it. That means that population is so far gone that's going to start infecting everything within that overlap of each colony and the feral hives also. And that's what we call snotty brood. If it gets to that point, that means the larvae are so sick they're not even allowed to develop, and you'll see this snotty consistency about the bees. And the bees will start to eat each other, which all that is vectoring in more diseases. And then you're just, at that point, you might as well just take the bees out and start all over. Again, it's not the mites that kill, it's the 20, and this is an older slide, so I do apologize. That should be a 28. So please put that in your notes. There's 28 known viruses that have been confirmed. And these are all viruses related with pathogens. So we have sac brood. This is Israeli paralysis and deformed wing virus. So the bees are completely deformed. There's no wing. So they didn't develop in the last little bit of it. Here's another one. It's called black queen cell virus, where they excrement and their poop, and I don't mean to be gross, but their poop should be a nice line. It should be a nice little streak. It's like you put a pen down and you just pull a nice little line. When it's dotty like this, and it's dotting, and it's just dot, 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 for them, it's like having diarrhea. And that means their enzymes in their gut, they're so sick that imagine you're older generation and you have to feed the younger generation. If we had to feed each other by mouth over and over and over, and I had the flu, how long would it take 3 or 4 generations down the road to be dead?
Okay, Jamie,
Here's
now
another one, and I
I
see
got a question. So what is the,
Yes, ma'am.
when you've got that picture there for the poop, what would you consider normal? How's normal bee poop supposed to look versus like on this here?
Okay.
Is it like-
If you see normal poop on the outside and it's the springtime, imagine just taking a pencil and dropping it and just drawing a line. It'll be a consistent little line.
Okay.
If you have a dark vehicle and you're out by your apiary, they'll line your vehicle up with those little lines. It's just maybe a 1/4 inch long. Some of them will get a little bit longer, a little bit less, but it'll be a consistent line. So they put their butt down, they defecate, and they lift it up and go. So you see all these little lines. I'll take some pictures of my Envoy. I mean, I don't mean to take pictures of poop, but I think that's what you'll see.
So that's normal.
And dark vehicles, that's normal. When you see this spotting, this dot, dot, dot type thing, this could be all, there's a couple, this could be Nosema too, but this is black cell. This was confirmed as black cell. That means their enzymes are so sick. And when they feed the queen, and the reason the virus is called this, when they feed the queen royal jelly, it actually liquefies her body and turns her completely black. And if you go to raise another queen, next queen will be jet black, and she'll just be this goo of black snot.
Okay, thank you.
So if you ever see the poop like this and it's dot, 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 like they just couldn't get it out, think of constipation.
Ooh.
This is I see a lot of this. Colonies, those are what do you think they are? Just by looking at them.
Wasps.
Oh, wasp.
They look like hornets, wasps. Those are actually honeybees that they ate the hairs off each other, and it's like a nervous tick. It's called chronic bee paralysis or virus, where they actually eat all the hairs off each other. If you have a high mite count, and I've seen this over and over and over, if you have a hive that's crashing, I can pull up a frame of bees. These bees communicate just like everybody else. They're walking around the frames. All of a sudden, I'll have people call me and go, I pulled up the frame and I see us walking around, and the bees didn't chase them off. If a wasp will land, if you take a frame and hold it, And a wasp during the robbing season, or if a wasp is aggressive enough and they land on the frame, honeybees will jump up and try to kill it or chase it off like a bumblebee and anything else. In this, these bees will walk around just like your other bees, normal. They're feeding each other, everything else. But this syndrome is they're actually, you'll see bees on top of each other and plucking all the hairs off each other. And this is guaranteed your hive is done. And there's also on top of that, type 1 and type 2, but they both have the same characteristics. So then we go on. So you depressed yet? Acute paralysis complex, which is a mix between that. Bee paralysis virus, cashmere disease, Israeli paralysis, and it goes on and on and on.
Just from one mite?
In the honeybee, that's from letting your mites go.
Wow.
So if you look at the honeybee health, this is the Bee Informed Partnership. If you look at this, acceptable winter losses. All beekeepers, no matter who you are, don't mind losing 10 to 15% of their bees. And that they do is they put out a survey every spring. If you become a second-year beekeeper and they look at the registration, you can join it, or you can go to the Bee Informed Partnership and join the site, and then they'll send you out a survey every spring. The total winter losses, this is what is acceptable, but look at the total winter losses, 30%. And it kind of hovers around there. That means they did a little bit, but they didn't do a lot. And then the total annual losses, this year in Ohio, we were at 60% for this year.
Is that bad?
That means 60% of the bees, of all the managed colonies, 60% of them died over the wintertime because of management. And so is it sustainable? If you had 100 cows in your field and you lost 60% of them every year and you had to keep breeding them, are you sustainable? But the reason honeybees do not get a huge thing, I mean, if you had that with cows, I mean, the farmers would be screaming at the top of their lungs. Beekeepers scream, but the thing is with us, I can run and raise 40 queens at one time so I can quickly recover my losses. But imagine if we didn't have to recover our losses and we were only at 10 or 15% every year. We would have an abundance of good, healthy bees from year to year to year. So again, I'm going to drill you again with this. Monitor monthly. You don't go into the doctor's office and ask for treatments. All you are is doing it. I know you're killing 300 bees, but that queen is already laying 1,500 to 2,000 every day. The easy check from Dayton is probably the easiest. You do not have to own it. You can still do it with a mason jar, and I'll show you how to do that, and we'll work together on that. And just remember the 9 per 300. Journaling and reading this and understanding this book. What mite count do you want? 192, I think this was 160 some odd, or 7. So that's what you see. And all I do is when I do the easy check, I pour it in a container so I can get a photo. I did learn to use baby wipes last year because it pours through easier and the mites really stick to it so we can do a good count. But that's what happens. And that's just being on top of your bees. The chemical treatments, I'm not going to go through all of this because there's so much to learn, and I could have an entire class just on this. But please read the Honeybee Health Coalition book before the next class in May and start understanding this, and we'll chip away a little bit at a time and understanding how each one of these are going to affect you, how much it costs to do a treatment. I have it all broke down, how much it costs each time, what the efficacy is, and we'll go through page by page and answer those questions. Some of the all-natural treatments. So if you don't like the chemicals, what can you do? The green drone, as in drone comb. You can actually place this in your hive, not in the center brood area. Drones, she likes to lay the drones on that outside. So on that second, third frame, or the 8th and 9th frame. So sticking these on the outside. What happens with this is the nurse bees draw it all out, the larger size cells. She lays the whole thing up with drones. Once you inspect and see all of these drones, how many days for the drones to emerge?
24.
24 days. I'm gonna make my note, or I'm gonna put a thumbtack in the top of this, or take a marker and write in on the 20th day. On the 20th day, I'm gonna take this frame, I'm gonna pull it out, I'm gonna stick it in a deep freeze, I'm gonna let it thaw back out, and I'm gonna put that frame back in the bee in this area. The bees will not draw, comb, or burr that up if that frame is missing for a night. What happens as you freeze those drones, you kill all the mites underneath the cappings. When you put it back, then all the nurse bees and the house bees will open up all these cells. They'll eat the heads off all the boys, and they'll pull all the out. And then you're cutting down, by nature, you're cutting down the population of the mites. But when we hit July and August, they quit laying drones because we get into a dearth. So this is a good treatment for May, June, July, and August, up to August.
Okay, Jamie.
I didn't have to put a chemical in. Yes, ma'am.
Question. When you pull that
Yep.
green frame out of the freezer, you don't stick it right out in your hive. Don't you have to let it cool down, get room temperature?
Thank you for that point. Because I did have, and I'll say this, it was my own fault, and I'll say it again, so thank you for the reminder. When you pull it out of the deep freeze, let it sit for at least 24 hours to warm back up. I had a person who I taught my first year doing these classes. Sometimes I just do things, it's like making artwork, you just do it. And each one of you have a career that you just do it, you don't even think about it, it's just unconscious. And I forgot to say, pull it out and thaw it out. He took the frozen drone comb and stuck it between 2 frames of brood and killed off 4 frames of brood. And when I went to his place, it was up in Montpelier. It's out of my district, but my students, I'll go anywhere. I went up, I looked at it, and I'm like, these were chilled. I'm like, why? There is no, it's hotter than a Dickens outside, everything else. I said, tell me your steps. Well, I pulled the drone comb out, I done this, and I pulled it out and I stuck it in. And I said, did you let it thaw? Nope. I said, so you put something in, it was sub-zero, stuck it in between 2 frames that were supposed to be at 90 degrees for brood, and you chilled and killed the brood. So thank you for that reminder. Let it thaw out, put it back, and then they'll pull them out and clean it up.
Okay.
The bottom sticky board. On a screened bottom board, you can actually take spray Pam or a spray oil, spray it on the bottom of that and slide that in. What happens on a screened bottom board, the mites will actually, let's just say up here where the word summer maintenance at, the mites that fall off, they're going to fall through, they're going to hit the screen, they're going to come to the bottom down here, and they're going to stick to that oil and suffocate. And that's a way to naturally take care of that. There's there's like 4 beekeepers in our club that use the Mighty Mite Killer. Please talk to them. It's John and Bev Gray, and Mr. and Mrs. Dravis. They are the best 2 that actually bought the product. The product is very expensive. I'm not going to lie. It's very expensive.
I think when I looked into
But
it, Jamie, it's
you
like
put it underneath. Yeah.
It's very expensive.
Yeah. And you have to have an extension cord nearby. Mr. Dravis tried it with a 1,000-watt generator, which it kicked it out because it's actually a type of heating mat. So you have to have a 2,000-watt generator. So there's a lot of bells and whistles to this that you have to understand. If you have it nearby and have electrical cord and you have a generator and you want to do this all natural, this is an option to go. I don't do it because I don't have time to spend. By the time you hit the cycle button on it, it takes 3 hours per hive. I don't have that times 150 hives to do, or I'd have to pay at least a bunch of college kids to do it. As I'm going to get on my soapbox again, what's it say? Journal, notepad, everything else that you can. Tons and tons of information. But that's in that midsummer. So remember, each box gets to that 70, 80%. We're going to put on another box. This last one, the summer maintenance, is just for those pests that are going to happen. Remember, these boxes, as you see that box get 50%, make sure you have another box that is painted, the frames are ready, and everything is ready to go in your honey house, garage, wherever you want to assemble equipment, and it's ready to go. If you wait for that box that you open up that hive and it's at 80%, and you still have to go to Dwayne's or go get equipment, you have to assemble the frames. They're going to put it on 3 or 4 days later. They're going to pull out a queen cell and they're going to swarm on you. And I call that my famous getting caught with your pants down. When you're scrambling to get gear and you're scrambling to do this and scrambling to do that. So make sure that you're thinking ahead. Don't go out and buy tons and tons of gear, because I can't say that each hive, a normal for somebody might be 4 boxes tall, and that's where they get to because of the forage in their area, their skill, their everything else. Some people, if they have an abundance of forage, an abundance of nectar, they're that colony, if they keep it healthy, they keep their mite load under control, they keep out the wax moth and the hive beetle, they might have 7 boxes tall. I cannot say, and I wish I could write a book, say, this is the concrete things that you do, and I'd be a millionaire. But it's be ahead of the bees, staying ahead just a little bit, that you have some excess gear that you have in storage ready to go, that if you go out today and you see that box is 80% and bees in every gap, that you can go into the garage or your honey house, get your gear, go back out, put your veil down, seal it back up, and get back in the bees and save your colony. So any questions for those that are on, have your mic muted? If you have any questions. Yes, Miss Lisa. I'll go ahead and unmute. I'll unmute everybody. Just one second. Go ahead. All right, Lisa.
She went back on mute.
Nope. Yep. I'm taking her off mute. I think she's putting
Okay.
back on mute.
How well do the natural treatments work for the mites?
The natural treatments work as much as you work. So if you, let's say the green drone comb, if you pull it on the 20th day after you see the eggs and you pull it on the 20th day before all those drones emerge, you're going to stay ahead the whole entire beginning of the season, 3/4 of the way through it. Not one problem. You don't have to use chemicals. You don't have to do anything. But if you don't have the time and all of a sudden that green drone comb has roughly 6,000 cells per side. Imagine if the mites get inside and you wait to the 29th day and all of a sudden all those drones have emerged and now you just took the population of the varroa and that's how fast that can happen. So if you're diligent about it and you're going to use it and you're good about going out there and checking your notes, and I go out there, I've used green drone comb for probably 8 years and I love it. But if you ever get back behind the 8 ball and you forget about it, all of a sudden your mite load just expanded exponentially. And then it's hard to get it back under control without using Mite Away Quick Strips, Formic Pro, HopGuard, or something else.
Okay, with what you're saying, okay, you're keeping on top of everything. The 20th day, you're supposed to go out there and you pull that green drone frame. What if it's the day that it decides to pour down rain and you can't get out there to get that frame out? What do?
Grab an umbrella and go out. That's like raising queens. And I've done it. You can ask Dee. We have an oversized umbrella. It's like you could put 3 grown adults underneath it. Like when queens emerge, my queens emerge, I'll have 40 queens emerge on the 16th day. So I go out the 15th day. What if it's pouring down rain? What happens is the first queen that comes out, she goes out and slaughters all her sisters. So I raised 40 and now I have 1 left in the box. So what do? You go out, you put an umbrella over the top of you. You make, if you have a pop-up or a little shelter type thing, you get in the box and you pull that frame.
Let's see if we have it.
I wish I had a magic wand where I could say, yes, if you do this one thing,
Yeah,
I
'cause
wish I had a
everything
magic
is like
wand where I could
weather
say I could do
pending.
this one thing. Yes.
So
So
could you
it's one of
do,
those things. Go ahead, Lisa.
so could you do a percentage of the conventional and the natural?
Absolutely. If you find in the beginning of the season that the natural ways work perfectly, but it's the timing on you. So the only person at the end of the night, you have to look in the mirror and go, I'm a good beekeeper, or I'm a bad beekeeper. At that end of that season, when the bees start to down in that August, September, when that starts to happen, then you can go to convention of the lighter miticide. So you can go mite away quick strips. It's an all natural product. It doesn't hurt the honey, it doesn't hurt the wax or Formic Pro, but there's a little bit of precautions you need to take with that, with a respirator, and use nitrile gloves. Okay? If the mites would get away from you, you do an alcohol wash, and now the mites are up to 7 or maybe 10, 15, 20. Then you go to Apivar Apistan. But if you go to Apivar Apistan, the problem with Apivar and Apistan is it's a heavy chemical, and it turns around and gets in the honey and the wax. So if you were going to do that before you took your honey, the problem is you cannot, for human consumption, if you treat with Apivar Apistan, that honey cannot be used for human consumption. So what I do then is I have little black thumbtacks that if I treat with that, I take the thumbtack and I shove it in on top of the frame so I can see it. And those are only fed to other bees. You follow me on that?
Sort of.
So if you hit with a hard, you hit with something hard, then that honey from that point, or what to do is extract your honey, get your honey off of it that you want, leave them at least enough to get through winter, and then treat with or with Apivar Apistan.
All right, so it's just trial and error and experimenting and.
Oh, boy.
Jamie, did
So
you say?
if any of you are somewhat business-like, just one second. If any of you are business-like and know that there's a flow chart, like you go to work, there's the CEO at the top and everything flows, and this person does this, and there's this decision does this, and this. Imagine taking squiggly lines between everything that you know in beekeeping, and that's exactly how it goes.
Jamie, you put I think what I thought I heard was the green. I have the green drone frames. I also have some other stuff, but the point is that I thought I heard you say you want to put those in, like, was it between the second and third frame of the brood box? Is that where you put them?
Yep. You don't put it all the way to the outside because that's always honey. And if you put that green drone comb to the outside, they'll pull it with drone cells and they'll fill it with nectar and put honey in it. Put it just on the outside of the drone or of the brood area. So the brood area in an 8-frame box is going to be those center 4 frames.
And just one?
And then put it in that second. Yep, just one.
Okay. I mean,
and
one.
Then just have it on your timetable. Yep, one per hive. Then put it in your journal that you stuck it in on this day, and it's going to take them some time to get the wax drawn out.
Okay.
And then check it. But once you start seeing eggs and larvae, then you put that in your journal and you take it at least 3 to 4 days before they turn on and they're going to emerge.
Okay.
So if I go in today and I know I see tons of eggs today and the queen's on there laying and she's laying drones, I'm going to put on there, pull this on the 22nd day.
Okay.
Before it gets to the 24th. So I know what's going on.
Well, I got also
and it's a nice.
Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, I bought also for a range of stuff, as Lisa was saying, Apistar, Apistan, which I know is the heavier hitters, and I wasn't real interested in that, but just I'd heard from others that you want to be prepared, because I know when I worked with Mark last fall, he was like shocked that 2 or 3 weeks before when he did a alcohol wash, he had like 2 mites, And when I was there, he had like 28, and he about peed his pants, quite frankly. So his point was sometimes when it happens that quick, which he thought occurred probably because of a near beekeeper who doesn't treat
Mike
for
Baum.
varroa, they did some robbing, the
Yep.
drones did some robbing and came back. So I kind of got a range of stuff just in case, but my thought was to use the drone piece. And then I'd like just maybe a 30-second shot from you on HopGuard, because I was reading that that's kind of a HopGuard 2 is being seen as a little not quite as heavy of an approach, but not necessarily natural. Your general thoughts on that?
Bill, what's Bill's last name? He's in the club. He uses HopGuard quite a bit. HopGuard is a 2-round dose. So what you're going to do, you're going to put it in 7 to 10 day treatment, then pull it out, and then put in a second treatment.
Okay.
It's made from hops. So if everybody for those of you like beer, what's in beer? Hops. What they do is they take the hops, they condense it down, and it's a natural chemical in the hops that they can concentrate, that they put on these strips and they put in between, and it does help take care of it.
Okay.
It's just another thing that instead of just treating, if you want a quick and fast treatment, what are you putting on? When are you putting it on? What's the efficacy of it or the kill rate of it? And what you don't mind putting in. I don't mind Apivar. I don't mind, Mitaway Quick Strips, Formic Pro, and HopGuard. I have all 3 of those in my garage. But I also have packs of Apivar and Apistan that if my mite count would burst, and I've seen that many times before, that you check it, all of a sudden it gets to be September, October, when the mites or the honeybee colonies start to shrink because now they're getting ready for winter, and all of a sudden there's a burst of something that was a dead out, was a mite bomb somewhere, and all of a sudden my mite count jumped to 15.
Right.
At that point, if I had an excessive amount, and here I'm going to explain this 2 different ways. If I know I had a 4 and a 5, and I use let's say Mitaway Quick Strips at 90%, I wouldn't be concerned that it was going to get out of control. It done a good job. Now, if I had a 30 or a 40 or high 20s, and I turn on and had an efficacy of 90% and used HopGuard, it's only going to bring it down, and I'm still going to have 5 or 6 mites left. So what I would do is, if I had a high mite count, I would use my chemical, say HopGuard. I would use 2 of them for a 14-day treatment, and then give it about a week and do another alcohol wash and see if it brought it down within that 1 or 2% of being underneath the 9 per 300. Because what happens is some people get so high up that ramp that no matter what they treat with, it does a 9% job, but after they do another alcohol wash after that treatment, they're still at 10 or 15 per 300. So they have to hit them again with something else.
Okay.
So you're kind of chasing behind the 8 ball, trying to have to hit your bees over and over and over because you let it ramp up in the first place. Yeah. So that's why I say, if you're doing it every month, you're always ahead of the 8 ball just a little bit. Some things can happen. Other beekeepers in your area can happen and things like that. But at least you're on the edge of keeping ahead of it and knowing what's going on with your colony than it is, I'm going to let them go a month and a half, and all of a sudden I go in and my mite count's 60. And remember, if you have one hive or 10 hives in your apiary, and you have one hive that exploded with mites, you still need to treat all 5 hives, because if you treat that one hive with that chemical, where are all the other mites going? Into your other hives that are smaller. Yep, moving next door. So if you're going to treat, and that's why some of these treatments, and don't be afraid, and I'm going to say this underneath the radar, Dwayne Hathaway is the only one around that he'll take a 5-pack of Apivar, Apistan or something and sell single treatments.
Oh.
We're not supposed to, because you're supposed to buy it per the seal. but he will sell. And I'll do the same thing. If you only have 1 or 2 hives, instead of you going out and spending $60 on a 10 treatment thing, because Mite-Away Quick Strips and Formic Pro have a shelf life.
Yes.
So if I go out and buy 100 treatments and I don't use them, they're done. Or the efficacy might go down to 40%. So now I'm treating and I'm really doing nothing. Oh, if people ask me, and especially for you guys, if you only have 1 or 2 or 3 hives and you need something, what I do is the cost that I have into it minus, and I just divide it out, and the treatments are like $3 to $4 a piece. Because I don't expect you to go out and buy a container of $150 worth of Apivar and only use it one time and use 1 strip.
That's good to know.
Any other questions?
Is the next class then May 9th?
9th. I'm going to have an email going out before that.
Okay.
We're probably going to get in the bees. I'm going to be in the bees. If you're around this area, you're more than welcome to come down on May 2nd. I'm going to be out of the apiary. We're going to start. I think there's 3 gentlemen that paid for having a hive to do the hive out at the apiary. So I'm going to set some bees up there by next week. This whole next week is supposed to be nice. So if you have your gear, your PPE means your gloves, at least a veil, if not a full suit. I'm going to try to be out there about noon, weather dependent. If it's cold, wet, rainy, and blowing, I won't be out there. And I'll put out an alert maybe the night before as AccuWeather kind of gets more accurate the day before. But right now I'm planning on May 2nd being there between 12 and about 4 o'clock p.m. because I'm going to go out and mow. We're going to clean up out there and get ready for season. I have a bunch of hives out there that we're breaking up, and then I'm getting ready hives for you guys to go out and be able to work on and work things out. So if you want to come out there between that time, between 12 and 4 o'clock, does everybody, and I'll put a direction thing in case some of you might not know where the apiary's at.
Yes,
It's
thank
at the
you.
Defiance Extension Office, right out on Schick Road. So you go past the Extension Office on Evansport. It's the only road that turns to your left,
Okay.
and you'll go down, and then just as you turn that corner headed towards Oxbow, you'll see a white picket fence and a little square cubicle with windows.
Okay.
But you're welcome to come out. We'll get in the bees a little bit, and we'll do some spring splits. We'll turn around and go through where to find the queen. Depending on my mite load out there, we might do some alcohol washes. So if you want to come out, and I'm going to put a disclaimer to that. If you're still health vulnerable or anything with everything with COVID, please don't come out.
Right.
The last thing I ever want on my mind in my life that I hurt somebody or killed somebody off. But we'll just have a small group of people. We'll be spanned out inside the apiary. We got 2 big picnic baskets tables that I own, so we can space ourselves out a little bit. But we'll be out there. We'll go through some hives, and it'll just be a day of hands-on how to install a nuke. We'll go over those steps a little bit.
Oh, that'll
If
be
you've
good.
never been into bees, that'd be a time to come out, open up a colony, and then actually see what you're getting into.
I'm not sure I can make it May 2nd, Jamie. I've got a respirator and
Okay.
a full mask coming because of my situation with my immune deficiency and my age.
Yeah.
But if you're going to send something out via email, is there some way you could, because I'm not getting stuff. I'm not paranoid. I'm not saying anybody's trying to cut me out, but like this is the 3rd or 4th
No,
time
and-
I have not received something. So could you
Yep.
make sure I'm on like some mailing list for sure?
Yep. Did you the login information today? Did you get that? With the
Login
email link, I mean, for this Zoom,
Yes, you sent
to
it.
get into the Zoom class this morning.
Yes. But when I
Last
called
night about
yesterday-
8 o'clock.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was about 8 o'clock last night.
Yes, I did. Thank you much. But you had said you'd sent it out the week before too. So, and I did not get that. So I just want to
Yeah.
make sure that I'm like not that I am on.
Yep.
some-
Nope. No, I Turon got it. I had some email problems with Yahoo Mail, and we've had some problems with that because what I done is for OSBA, I sent out, there was 5 emails with over 100 people in it. And they've tagged, which I did not know here this last week. So they tagged me as a spammer,
Oh,
that I was sending out spam emails, which I didn't know they could do.
Oh.
So after I found things out, because I've had, all of a sudden I'm getting glitches that if I send anything out over 5 people, some people get it, some people don't. And I'm like, what is going on? And then I got a thing in my spam junk mail from YouTube or from Yahoo that said, there's something to stay that do not be spamming, blah, 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 blah. So I wrote them back and they said, well, you've sent out bogus emails with spam. And I said, I wasn't doing, and I explained to them, it was for OSBA. It was for the talk that was coming up on the Sunday that I did. And there was about 300 people, and Ituron sent out a bunch of stuff. So no, I got all that straightened out the other day.
and I got your email, I think it was today, about the OSBA training tomorrow and over the next 3 weeks. I've signed up for that. Do I need to continue to sign up for that for each one?
For each one, we're asking that because I had a Zoom license for H&R Block, which is only 100 people. And when I started it, I said, I'll do this live thing and we'll see how it takes off. Instantly, we had I sold the 100 out within about 9 hours. There was 300 people on the waiting list that I just couldn't get in.
Wow.
So
good.
I went to OSBA. We had as a director, we talked about it. And I said, okay, for Dave's, I said, let's get a license for 500 people and see what that is. Where I think we're at 390 something. And my emails, I've been watching it on monitor 3, and it's going like ding, 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 ding. So we might even have 500 filled up before Sunday.
Okay.
But what to do, I sent out an instruction, and I'll send it out to everybody tonight, that what is an instruction you can turn on and log in just like you're doing now, logging in, listen to it this way so you can see the presentation. But what we had is a little bit of feedback from older generation. So I call those guys and I said, well, you can still join and listen per phone call.
Yeah.
So I put out an instruction manual that'll go out to you guys here in just about 15 minutes. So you can join in by either. There's still 210 seats. We still got plenty of room.
Okay.
So if you want to do that, it's every other Sunday.
Right.
The instruction manual that I'm sending out has the next Dave Noble's going to be Sunday at 7:00. The second Sunday of May, Dwight Wells will be on about bee nutrition and forage. And then Barb Bletcher will be on with really detailed stuff about doing an alcohol wash, why we do it, all the pesticides, and an overall report of honeybees in Ohio and what we're at and what's going on.
So if you can't make one of those, then you can watch it on YouTube video?
Yes, ma'am, and thank you for that reminder. If you cannot catch one of those Sunday talks for the live recording, if you go to YouTube and type in Ohio State Beekeepers Association, and what it'll do is it'll take you to a Facebook or a YouTube channel, and that YouTube channel will have all the recordings. There's a little bit of animation in the beginning and a little disclaimer and telling people how to do things. And then that whole recording will be on there. It'll be on, it'll take me about a week. So if it's recorded, say tomorrow for Dave Noble, the next following Sunday, it'll be posted. So that gives me about a week to do editing, voiceover, because some people talk with a really big boisterous voice. So I got to calm that down. So I really got to listen to the whole thing about 6 times and tweak everything, put the animation with it, the disclaimer, and then I'll publicize that.
So
we got tons of good stuff coming up.
So the recording that we did of our internship of the last class, will that be on the Facebook page?
That'll be on your Facebook page. In fact, I had to stop it because it's at like 80 some odd %. Because if I streamed that and upload it to YouTube, we would have never been able to talk today. So what it's going to be, I'm going to load that. I have a personal YouTube channel. The talk that we had last on April 11th, that one I already have edited, all set up, ready to go. As soon as that finishes, and then I'll put a link on the Facebook page for you guys, and then how to get to that. And then you guys can turn on, watch that as many times as you want, take notes, but it'll have everything broke out that way also.
Oh, good.
But it takes about 6 hours to upload.
Holy cow.
That's why I send out emails at 3 or 4 in the morning. Did you know that, Gail?
You never sleep, Jamie.
So
No, I
Jamie
sleep.
Bullard,
I sleep from. Yes, Laura.
no, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. That's all right.
Oh, okay. Our next class on May 9th, is that going to be also like this, or do you think we'll be in a classroom?
Mm-mm.
I don't.
I have not heard anything. What I'm kind of following this as close as I can. Ohio State University owns the room. Ohio State University Extension is still closed. They will not let anybody in the building. I mean, they're all working from home, other than Bruce Clevenger. Women and Family Services on that side of it, they have voiced that they want nobody in the building. So what we might do is we might have a classroom like this for May. I'm watching the governor every day because it also ties in with the IRS laws, and I'm watching the president every day to see what's going to happen. I think May is going to be the same way like this, but I will be at the apiary. I'm going to try to be out the apiary 3 Saturdays a month because I do a lot of other things also. And then I've had a few people call and just ask if they can come out with their kids or their family, an independent type thing. I said, yeah. So there's going to be somebody out there. So what we'll do is we'll set the Saturdays up to turn around and go out to the apiary, other than what we do as far as class. So right now, until I get an okay from the building or the extension office or Ohio State University that we can have meetings. So we're going to hold off of that. And we do have some people with some health issues, so I don't ever want to turn around and be on that end of it. So let's just shoot for May 9th. I'll send out a link about a week before, letting you guys know what's going on and how to log in, just like we did for this class. May 2nd, I will be at the community apiary, the Pollinator Sanctuary, between 12 and 4 o'clock, weather dependent. So I will make that call probably on Thursday. If it's going to be cold, wet, rainy, and everything, I will not be out there. If it's below 50 degrees, I do not crack open hives because you're going to kill the colony. But if it's anything above that and it's nice, I might even push it back to Sunday. Do a 2-day thing if I want, if we get enough interest in it. So I'll put out a schedule here in just a little bit. Yep, go ahead.
And one more, how would we get our paperwork then for the next class?
Those are already being printed out. And if all else, I'll just turn around batch mail them back out again. Or if you're going to be in the Defiance County area, I'll have the H&R Block will be open and you can pick them up there. So one or the other. Just let me know. I'll try and put them in an envelope and mail them out. So if you're not in the area, or you're going to be at home, I can just email them out. Dee's running around between here and Angola, so I can catch some people that way. Hicksville, depending which way we go up to Angola, I can try and drop some stuff off also.
You can either email mine or drop off whichever is convenient for you and Dee, whatever works.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So if there's no other questions, thank you very much for your time, everybody.
Thank you, Jim.
For those, and I'm not going to call anybody out, but if you are the type of person that procrastinates, I suggest you light a fire underneath your rear because bees are coming. Bees are building. I was in them the other day for quite a little bit. They're gobbling up pollen. They're pulling stuff in and they're building. So nukes will be ready in approximately another week. So time to get ready.
Oh, boy.
Jamie, I'm ready. Have all the hives, got the place. But as you talked, it may be a couple weeks. I thought you said maybe you could like stack a nuke on top of a nuke, and maybe for another week or two. If
Yeah.
that doesn't work,
Yep.
let me know.
Yeah, and no, and that's not a problem. What I do is all the nukes, when I try and inspect a nuke, even before you guys come out, what I do is I got a whole list, and it start from the first person that asked me, which you're right at the top. The second person asked me, I got a whole list. When I go out, if I know that queen has laid 2 frames brood and everything looks good, then I turn on put tick marks on the top. I just put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and just start writing them out. As I get 5 or 10, or maybe there's 15 that are ready, after that, then I come in and contact the first 15 people.
Okay.
And as that goes through, that's why I don't offer. I mean, if you were buying 1, I got you on the list for 1. I can't sell you 2 right now.
Right.
So if whatever you told me at the beginning, those are all the highs or nukes that I have.
Yeah.
I sell those out. And as the other ones are ready, if it's in between and say one hive really builds up faster than the others, then I stick on a second box just to make sure they don't swarm.
Yeah.
Because then that puts that whole entire colony back a month and a half. All right, everybody. I want you to have a good day. Hope I
Want
didn't
us
blow
to
some
read
brain
the next
cells
2
out.
chapters?
Yes, ma'am. In the book. Oh, let me get mine here.
Where am I supposed to be at?
Just read it all.
I'll send that out in an email. I'll send out an email because there's
Just
a
read it
couple
all,
people that
Gail.
aren't on here.
Just
Well,
read it
I've
all.
already been through
Yeah.
it, so I'm going back through again. I even got my marker.
So on this, the next quiz will go out on the 30th. And that'll cover some stuff that's in the book of what you read this last time. It'll also cover these 2 PowerPoints. And I might even, because I have the free version of SurveyMonkey, there might be 2 of them. And the links will be provided. I'll also post them in the, for Arquette's or for Laura and her husband. I'll actually send out 2 links for that so you can, because what it does is once you take the test, it locks you out and you can't take it a second time.
Right.
So what I'll
Right.
do, or if you have 2 devices in the house, if you have a laptop and an iPad, you can do it from different addresses that way. But I'll
No.
work something out to get that taken care of for you.
And I have a question, Jamie.
So other than that,
Well,
I listened to you this morning for the quiz, and I had Lenny go to the other room because I didn't want him to hear the answers. Do you want him to go ahead and take that test? The first one?
yes, ma'am.
All righty. I will have
Yep.
him do that.
If he and the link is in the email, and I also have it on the Facebook for you guys.
All right. Thank you.
And if not, I can tag it. I'll tag it on this email that's going to go out to you.
yeah, send a new link for that Facebook page, because when I try to bring it up on my phone, it says it doesn't exist on my Facebook page, on my cell phone.
Yeah, because I have it private. I have it private because when you post things like that, here's the problem. Then the next thing you know, you got people from overseas and you got all these other beekeepers that want to join something, and then those are the people that I find that are the little bit more difficult ones that, I don't ever want to treat with this, and I don't ever want to watch Mike Counting, and I want bees to be bees. No, I want this to be about you guys and learning. And then at the end of this, what I'm trying to do right now is I want to have an independent page for YouTube also, that all these videos will be up and you guys will just have access to those. Because each year, as I learn more and things kind of change in beekeeping, I mean, the slides that you guys have, these PowerPoints that I've given you, look a little bit different from last year's. They look completely different from 4 years ago when I started this. So as things change, like I used to teach that the Varroa were actually drinking the blood, the hemolymph of the bees. And then as things changed up and we got better information. So